The clock on Ethan Cole's dashboard read 8:47 a.m., 13 minutes. That's all he had left to make the interview that could save his daughter's future. His knuckles whitened on the steering wheel as he wove through downtown traffic, every red light a knife to his hope. Then he saw her, a woman in a gray suit stumbling into the crosswalk, her ankle twisted at an impossible angle. Car horns screamed, brakes shrieked. In that split second, Ethan faced a choice that would define everything: arrive on time to save his own life, or stop to save a stranger's. Before we dive into Ethan's impossible decision, if you're enjoying the story, please hit that like button and leave a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, let's continue. The morning had started like a fragile promise, the kind that shatters at the slightest touch. Ethan Cole had been awake since 4:30 a.m., though sleep had barely found him the night before. He'd spent those dark hours rehearsing answers to interview questions he'd memorized weeks ago, his lips moving silently in the bathroom mirror while his 7-year-old daughter, Maya, slept in the next room. The apartment was quiet except for the steady drip of the kitchen faucet he couldn't afford to fix and the occasional rumble of trains passing 3 blocks away. His only suit, a charcoal gray number he'd bought at a thrift store for $12, hung on the back of the bathroom door, freshly pressed with an iron he'd borrowed from Mrs. Chen downstairs. The shirt was white, or had been once. Now it carried the faint yellow tinge of too many washings, but it was clean, and the collar wasn't frayed. That would have to be enough. At 6:15, Maya had padded into the kitchen in her dinosaur pajamas, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Big day, Daddy?" "The biggest, sweetheart." Ethan had knelt to her level, smoothing down the wild, dark curls she'd inherited from her mother. Her mother who'd left 3 years ago, unable to handle the weight of their struggles. This could change everything for us. Maya had wrapped her small arms around his neck. "You're going to do great. You're the smartest daddy in the whole world." "Not the smartest, Bug, but I'm going to try my hardest." He'd made her favorite breakfast, scrambled eggs with cheese, toast cut into triangles, and watched her eat while nursing black coffee he could barely stomach. The job posting had appeared like a miracle 2 months ago. Operations manager at Meridian Solutions, a mid-sized tech firm downtown. It wasn't glamorous, but it offered real salary, health benefits, and actual stability. For a single father who'd been stringing together part-time warehouse shifts and overnight security jobs, it was everything. The application process had been grueling. 3 rounds of interviews, a skills assessment, a background check. Each step forward felt like defying gravity. Ethan had researched the company obsessively, memorized their annual reports, learned the names of every executive. He'd practiced his handshake until his palm ached. He'd prepared for every possible question, everything except running late. At 7:30, he dropped Maya at the before-school program, the one that cost $40 a week he could barely spare. She'd kissed his cheek and whispered, "Remember, Daddy, you're brave and you're strong and you never give up." Words he'd told her 100 times when she was scared of the dark or worried about the kids at school who teased her about her worn sneakers. Now she was giving them back to him, this fierce little person who believed in him more than he believed in himself. "I love you, Maya. Love you to the moon and back." By 8 o'clock, Ethan was on the road, his ancient Honda Civic sputtering through the downtown sprawl. The interview was scheduled for 9 a.m. sharp at Meridian's headquarters on Ashford Avenue. He'd mapped the route a dozen times, built in a 20-minute buffer for traffic. But this was the city, and the city had other plans. At 8:15, he hit the first snarl, a fender bender on the interstate that backed up traffic for 2 miles. Ethan's chest tightened as he watched the minutes tick away on the dashboard clock. He switched lanes, looking for an opening, his mind racing through alternate routes. Come on, come on! At 8:32, he took an exit into surface streets, navigating through neighborhoods he only half recognized. His phone GPS recalculated constantly, the robotic voice offering directions that seemed designed to confuse rather than help. Left on Morrison. Right on 5th. Proceed to the highlighted route. At 8:40, he was 10 blocks away. Still makeable. His hands were slick with sweat against the steering wheel. He could feel his heartbeat in his throat, taste the metallic edge of anxiety on his tongue. Everything depended on this. The past 6 months of applications, rejections, late-night prayers whispered into the dark. It all came down to the next 20 minutes. The medical bills from Maya's pneumonia last winter were still unpaid, stacked in a drawer he couldn't bear to open. The rent was due in 5 days, and his landlord had stopped accepting excuses. The Civic needed new brake pads, maybe new rotors too, work that would cost hundreds he didn't have. Maya needed a winter coat that actually fit, new shoes, school supplies. She needed a life that wasn't held together by duct tape and hope. This job could fix it, all of it. At 8:44, Ethan turned onto Ashford Avenue. The Meridian building rose ahead, glass and steel gleaming in the morning sun. 6 blocks. He could see it. His breathing came faster. He'd make it. Against all odds, he'd actually make it. Then, at 8:47, the world tilted. The intersection at Ashford and 12th was controlled by a traffic light that had just turned green. Ethan pressed the accelerator, ready to surge forward with the flow of vehicles. That's when he saw her. A woman in a gray business suit stepped off the curb on the right side of the street. Her heel caught on something. A crack in the pavement, maybe, or just bad luck. And she stumbled hard. Ethan watched it happen as if in slow motion, her ankle twisting at a sickening angle, her briefcase flying from her hand, papers scattering like startled birds. She fell forward, catching herself with her palms, but the momentum carried her stumbling into the crosswalk, into traffic. A delivery truck was barreling through the intersection from the left, its driver's attention on his phone. He hadn't seen the woman, hadn't seen her fall, hadn't registered her crawling on hands and knees in the middle of the road, dazed and disoriented. Horns erupted around Ethan. Someone screamed. The woman looked up, saw the truck bearing down on her, and froze. That terrible human instinct when fear overwhelms every other command. Ethan's foot found the brake before his brain could process the decision. The Civic screeched to a halt in the middle of the intersection. Drivers behind him laid on their horns, a cacophony of rage and impatience. Ethan threw the car into park and burst from the driver's seat, leaving the door hanging open, the engine running. "Hey! Hey!" He sprinted into the intersection, waving his arms at the truck. The driver looked up from his phone, eyes widening in shock. Brakes screamed, rubber burned against asphalt. The truck lurched to a stop 15 feet from where the woman knelt, still frozen in terror. Ethan reached her in seconds, his hands finding her shoulders. "You're okay. I've got you. You're okay." She looked up at him with wide, unfocused eyes. Mid-30s maybe, with dark hair pulled into a neat bun that had come half undone in the fall. Blood seeped from scrapes on her palms. Her face was sheet white, shock settling in. My ankle. Don't move it yet. Let's get you out of the road first." Ethan slipped an arm around her waist and helped her stand on one leg. She was taller than him by an inch, but she leaned her full weight against him without hesitation, trusting this stranger completely. Together they hobbled to the sidewalk while traffic slowly began to move around them, drivers shooting dirty looks and muttered curses in their direction. Once on the curb, Ethan eased her down to sit against a storefront window. Her breathing was shallow, panicked. He recognized the signs of shock from his EMT training, a certification he'd earned years ago but never used professionally. "My name's Ethan. What's yours?" "Sarah." Her voice shook. "Sarah Chen." "Okay, Sarah. I need you to take deep breaths for me. In through your nose, out through your mouth. You're safe now." She nodded, trying to follow his instructions. Her hands trembled as she gripped his forearm. I have a meeting, 9 o'clock. I can't. Let's worry about you first." Ethan knelt beside her injured ankle. It was already swelling, the skin tight and discolored. "Can you wiggle your toes?" She tried, grimaced. "Yes. It hurts, but yes." "Good sign. Probably a sprain, not a break. But you need ice and elevation." He glanced around, spotted a coffee shop across the street. "Stay here. Don't try to stand." The dashboard clock in his abandoned car read 8:51, 9 minutes. Ethan ran. He crossed the street at a sprint, dodged through the morning coffee rush, and emerged 30 seconds later with a bag of ice the barista had hastily assembled. When he returned to Sarah, she was on her phone, speaking rapidly to someone. I know, but there's been an accident." "No, I'm okay, but I can't walk." 15 minutes, maybe 20 if I can find a cab." Ethan knelt again and gently positioned the ice against her ankle. She flinched but didn't pull away. Thank you, she mouthed to him, still talking on the phone. Yes, I understand how important this is. I'll be there as soon as I can. She ended the call and looked at Ethan with something between gratitude and desperation. I don't know how to thank you. You saved my life. Anyone would have done the same. No. Her voice was firm despite the pain. They wouldn't have. Everyone else just kept driving. 8:54. Ethan's interview was 6 blocks away. If he left right now, he might still make it. He could apologize for being disheveled, explain he'd helped someone in an emergency. They might understand. They might not. But he'd at least be there. He looked at Sarah, really looked at her. She was still shaking, still pale. Her ankle was swelling larger by the minute. She was alone on a street corner, unable to walk, clearly needed to be somewhere urgently. Your meeting, Ethan said. How important is it? The most important meeting of my career. A bitter laugh escaped her. I'm supposed to be leading final interviews for a key position. If I'm not there, 8:55. Ethan made his decision. Where do you need to be? Sarah blinked. What? Where's your meeting? My car's right there. He gestured to the Civic still parked awkwardly in the intersection, hazards now blinking. I can drive you. You've already done so much. I can't ask. You're not asking. I'm offering. He stood, extended his hand. Come on, let's get you where you need to be. Sarah stared at him for a long moment, and something shifted in her expression. Recognition of kindness, maybe. Or just profound relief that she wasn't alone. She took his hand. Getting Sarah into the car was an exercise in patience and pain management. She couldn't put any weight on her injured ankle, so Ethan supported her entire weight as they made the slow journey across the street. Drivers honked as they maneuvered around his parked car, and one man shouted something creative about learning to drive. Ethan ignored them all. Once Sarah was settled in the passenger seat with her ankle elevated on the dashboard, Ethan slid behind the wheel. His hands were shaking now, adrenaline finally catching up to him. 8:58. Where to? His voice sounded hollow in his own ears. Meridian Solutions, Ashford and 19th. Ethan's foot slipped off the brake. The car jerked. Meridian Solutions? Yes. Do you know it? He knew it. He was supposed to be there in exactly 2 minutes. Yeah, I know it. The irony was so sharp it could cut. Here he was, saving a woman who worked at the very company where his future hung in the balance. He thought about telling her, explaining the coincidence, maybe asking if she could put in a word for him. But something stopped him. Maybe pride. Maybe the understanding that this moment wasn't about him. Hold on, Ethan said, and he drove. The 6 blocks to Meridian passed in a blur. Ethan's mind fractured into parallel tracks, one focused on the road, another on Sarah's labored breathing beside him, and a third already mourning the interview he was missing. Each red light was agony, each delayed second another nail in the coffin of his opportunity. At 9:03, he pulled up to the Meridian building's main entrance. Here we are? Sarah looked at the building, then back at Ethan. You've been incredibly kind. Please, let me get your information. I want to repay you somehow. No need. Ethan put the car in park. Can you make it inside okay? I'll manage. But she didn't move to get out. Instead, she studied his face with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. You're upset. I can see it. What did helping me cost you? Nothing important? The lie tasted like ash. You're a terrible liar. She reached for her purse, pulled out a business card. Please, take this. Call me if you need anything. I mean it. Ethan accepted the card without looking at it, tucking it into his jacket pocket. Good luck with your meeting. Good luck with whatever you're rushing to. She smiled, sad and knowing. I have a feeling you're the kind of person who deserves good things. He helped her out of the car, watched her limp through Meridian's glass doors supported by a concerned security guard. Then he sat alone in his idling car, staring at the building that had represented all his hopes. 9:07. He could still go in. He could explain what happened, apologize profusely, beg for another chance. But Ethan had been on the other side of hiring decisions before, back when he'd had a real career. He knew how it worked. Punctuality was a test of respect and reliability. Showing up late to an interview, no matter the reason, sent a message. Still, what choice did he have? Ethan parked in the visitor lot, checked his reflection in the rearview mirror, and grimaced. His white shirt was smudged with dirt from kneeling on the sidewalk. His hand still shook slightly. He looked like a man who'd been in a fight, not someone ready for a professional interview. But he was here. That had to count for something. The Meridian lobby was all polished marble and modern art, the kind of corporate elegance that made Ethan feel instantly out of place. A receptionist behind a curved desk looked up as he approached. "Can I help you?" "Ethan Cole. I have a 9 a.m. interview for the operations manager position." She glanced at her computer screen and Ethan saw the flicker of judgment in her eyes. "You're 15 minutes late, Mr. Cole." "I know. There was an emergency. A woman was injured in traffic and Please have a seat. I'll let the interview panel know you've arrived." The dismissal was polite but absolute. Ethan retreated to a leather couch near the windows and sat, hands clasped between his knees, trying to slow his racing heart. Around him, Meridian hummed with quiet efficiency. Employees moved through the lobby with purpose, their badges swinging from lanyards, their conversations about projects and deadlines and weekend plans. This was the world Ethan wanted to inhabit again, a place where work was stable, where paychecks arrived on schedule, where you could plan more than a week ahead. A world that might have just slipped through his fingers because he'd chosen to help a stranger. At 9:23, the receptionist called his name. "Mr. Cole? They'll see you now. 5th floor, conference room C." Ethan stood on legs that didn't feel entirely solid. "Thank you." The elevator ride lasted an eternity. Ethan caught his reflection in the polished doors, rumpled suit, dirt-smudged shirt, eyes shadowed with exhaustion and stress. He looked exactly like what he was, a man barely holding it together, trying to convince successful people he was worth their time. Conference room C had a glass wall that looked out over the city. 3 people sat behind a long table, 2 men in their 40s wearing crisp suits and 1 woman. Ethan's breath caught. It was Sarah. She sat at the center of the table, her injured ankle elevated on a small stool beneath the table, an ice pack visible against the fabric of her skirt. Her expression was carefully neutral, but her eyes widened slightly when she saw him. Recognition, understanding, and something else Ethan couldn't quite read. "Mr. Cole," one of the men said, gesturing to a chair across from them. "Please, sit down." Ethan sat. His mind reeled, trying to process the impossibility of the situation. Sarah worked here. Sarah was interviewing him. "I'm Marcus Webb, Director of Operations," the man continued. "This is James Park, our HR Director, and Sarah Chen, our CEO." CEO. The woman Ethan had pulled from traffic, the woman whose ankle he'd iced, the woman he'd driven to this very building. She was the CEO of Meridian Solutions. "It's a pleasure to meet you all," Ethan managed, his voice remarkably steady considering his entire world had just tilted sideways. Sarah, CEO, Sarah Chen, leaned forward slightly. "Mr. Cole, you're 18 minutes late for this interview. Would you like to explain why?" Her tone was professional, almost cold, but there was something in her eyes, a test perhaps, or a challenge. Ethan realized she wanted to hear what he would say, whether he would claim their encounter, use it as leverage, or pretend it had never happened. He made his choice. "I was on my way here when I saw someone in trouble. They needed help, and helping them meant I couldn't be here on time. I apologize for the inconvenience." "Someone in trouble," Marcus repeated, making notes. "Can you be more specific?" "A woman had fallen in traffic. She was injured and disoriented. I stopped to help her, made sure she was safe, and helped her get to where she needed to be." "That was very noble," James said, and Ethan couldn't tell if he meant it or not. "But surely you understood the importance of being punctual for an interview." "I did." "And yet you chose to stop anyway?" "Yes." Sarah's expression hadn't changed, but she tilted her head slightly. "Why?" "Because it was the right thing to do." "Even knowing it might cost you this opportunity?" Ethan met her gaze directly. "Even knowing that?" "Some might say that's poor judgment," Marcus interjected, "prioritizing a stranger over your own professional future." "Maybe." Ethan's hands were steady now, his voice gaining strength. "But I have a daughter. She's 7 years old, and she watches everything I do. She learns about the world by watching how I move through it. If I'd driven past someone who needed help because I was worried about myself, what would that have taught her? That success means ignoring people in need? That your own comfort matters more than someone else's safety? He paused, realizing he'd said too much, revealed too much, but there was no taking it back now. I want her to know that character matters, that doing the right thing matters, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. So yes, I stopped. And yes, I knew I might lose this chance because of it, but I can live with that consequence. What I couldn't live with is becoming the kind of person who wouldn't stop. Silence filled the conference room. Marcus and James exchanged glances. Sarah remained perfectly still, her expression unreadable. Then she spoke. "Mr. Cole, that woman you helped, do you have any idea who she was?" Ethan hesitated. The test continued. "No, ma'am. I didn't ask her name until after she was safe." "She didn't mention where she worked?" "She did. She said she had an important meeting here at Meridian Solutions." "And it didn't occur to you to mention that connection when you arrived?" "It occurred to me," Ethan admitted. "But that's not why I helped her. I helped her because she needed help. Using that to leverage this interview felt wrong." Sarah's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Even though you desperately need this job?" "How do you—" Ethan stopped. Of course she knew. She'd seen his application, his work history, the gaps in his resume that told the story of his struggles. She knew everything. "Yes," he said simply, "even though I desperately need this job." Marcus cleared his throat. "Mr. Cole, let's move on to your qualifications. According to your resume, you have 6 years of operations experience." "Actually," Sarah interrupted, "I'd like to ask Mr. Cole one more question first." Marcus deferred with a nod. Sarah leaned back in her chair, studying Ethan with those sharp, assessing eyes. "When you saw me in the street, and yes, Mr. Cole, I'm obviously the woman you helped. What went through your mind in that moment of decision?" Ethan thought back to that crystallized second, the truck bearing down, the woman frozen in fear, the dashboard clock counting down his future. "Honestly, I didn't think. My body moved before my brain could talk me out of it. It wasn't until after I'd already stopped that I realized what I'd done, what it would cost. And by then," he shrugged. "By then, the choice was already made." "You regret it?" Did he? Ethan looked at this woman who'd built a company, who employed hundreds of people, who was clearly brilliant and driven and successful. She was alive because he'd stopped. That had to mean something. "No," he said, "I don't regret it." Sarah nodded slowly, as if he'd confirmed something she'd suspected. She glanced at her colleagues. "Gentlemen, I think we've heard enough for now. Mr. Cole, would you mind waiting outside for a few minutes while we discuss?" "Of course." Ethan stood, shook hands with each of them, and walked out of the conference room on legs that felt disconnected from his body. The door closed behind him with a soft click. He'd blown it. He knew he'd blown it. They might have admired his principles, might have appreciated his honesty, but principles didn't show up on time. Principles didn't demonstrate the kind of judgment and reliability companies needed in an operations manager. Ethan found a chair in the hallway and sat, dropping his head into his hands. The weight of the morning crashed down on him all at once. The fear, the adrenaline, the impossible choice, the surreal interview. He was exhausted, bone deep, soul tired, exhausted. His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Chen. Maya's teacher called. She needs new markers for art class. $8. Can you get them this week? $8. A nothing expense for most people. For Ethan, it meant deciding what else went unpaid. He typed back, "I'll handle it," and put the phone away. Through the glass wall of conference room C, he could see the 3 interviewers in discussion. Marcus was gesturing emphatically. James was making notes. Sarah sat quietly, her injured ankle still elevated, her expression thoughtful. Then she looked up and caught Ethan watching. For a moment, their eyes met through the glass. Sarah smiled, a real smile this time, warm and genuine, and Ethan felt something shift in his chest. Hope, maybe, or just recognition that whatever happened, he'd made the right choice. The conference room door opened. "Mr. Cole?" Sarah stood in the doorway, balancing carefully on her good ankle. "Could you come back in, please?" Here it was, the gentle rejection, "We appreciate your time, but we've decided to go in another direction." Ethan had heard it before. He could handle it again. He walked back into the room and sat. Sarah settled back into her chair with obvious relief. "Mr. Cole, Ethan, I'm going to be direct with you because I think you appreciate directness." "Yes, ma'am." "When you pulled me out of traffic this morning, you saved my life. That truck would have hit me. I would have been seriously injured, possibly killed. You saw someone in danger and acted without hesitation, without calculation, without thinking about the cost to yourself. Do you understand how rare that is?" Ethan didn't know how to respond, so he said nothing. Sarah continued, "I've built this company from the ground up over 12 years. I've interviewed hundreds of candidates for dozens of positions. I've learned to read people quickly, their motivations, their values, what drives them. And I've learned that skills can be taught, but character can't. You either have it or you don't." She paused, exchanging glances with Marcus and James. "Your resume shows gaps in employment, a patchwork of jobs that suggest instability. On paper, you're not our strongest candidate, but what happened this morning revealed more about you than any interview question could. It showed me who you are when nobody's watching, when there's no reward for doing the right thing. It showed me you're someone who can be trusted with responsibility, with authority, with the kind of decisions that matter." Ethan's heart hammered against his ribs. "However," Sarah said, and there was the rejection, "I need to know that the man who stopped for me this morning is the same man who will show up for this company every day. I need to know that your compassion doesn't override your judgment, that your principles can coexist with professional excellence. Can you give me that assurance?" "I can," Ethan said immediately. "What I did this morning wasn't about poor judgment. It was about priorities. In that moment, saving a life mattered more than my career. But in the normal course of work, I understand priorities are different. I understand deadlines, commitments, the need for reliability. I wouldn't have made it through 6 years in operations if I didn't." Marcus leaned forward. "Your previous employer, Caldwell Industries. You left there 3 years ago. Why?" The question Ethan had been dreading. "My wife left around that time. I had a young daughter and no childcare support. Caldwell required significant travel, 60-hour weeks. I couldn't maintain that schedule and be a present father. So I left to take jobs with more flexibility, even though they paid less and offered less advancement." "That must have been difficult," James said quietly. "It was. It still is. But Maya, my daughter, she needed me. She still needs me. This job, if you offer it, would give us stability we haven't had in years. But I need you to understand that being her father comes first, always." "If that's a problem." "It's not," Sarah interrupted. She was smiling again. "Ethan, we're a company that values work-life balance. We offer flexible hours, remote work options, excellent health benefits. We understand that our employees have lives outside these walls. What we need from you is dedication to the work when you're here, and honest communication about what you need to thrive both professionally and personally. Can you give us that?" "Yes, absolutely yes." Sarah looked at Marcus and James. Both men nodded. "Then on behalf of Meridian Solutions, I'd like to offer you the position of operations manager, starting salary of $75,000 per year, full benefits, 2 weeks vacation to start. We'd like you to begin in 2 weeks if that works with your current obligations." The words didn't make sense at first. Ethan's brain refused to process them, certain he'd misheard, certain this was some elaborate misunderstanding. You're offering me the job?" "We are." Sarah extended her hand across the table. "What do you say, Ethan? Want to join our team?" Ethan took her hand, shook it, and felt 3 years of crushing pressure lift from his shoulders. "Yes. Thank you. I won't let you down. I know you won't." The rest of the meeting passed in a blur of paperwork and logistics. HR details, start dates, parking information, security badges. Ethan moved through it mechanically, his mind still struggling to catch up with reality. He'd gotten the job. Despite everything, maybe because of everything, he'd gotten the job. Finally, Marcus and James excused themselves, leaving Ethan alone with Sarah. She shifted her injured ankle with a wince. "How's it feeling?" Ethan asked. "Painful, but worth it, obviously." She laughed. "I'm going to have to explain to people how I sprained my ankle right before hiring the man who saved me. They're going to think I've lost my mind." "Have you?" "Maybe. Or maybe I've just remembered what matters." Sarah's expression turned serious. "Ethan, I want you to understand something. We didn't hire you out of gratitude or obligation. We hired you because you're qualified, because your experience matches our needs, and because your interview, unconventional though it was, demonstrated exactly the kind of judgment and values we want in our leadership team. The fact that you saved my life this morning just expedited a decision we would have made anyway." Ethan wanted to believe her, needed to believe her. "Thank you for saying that." "I mean it." She pulled out her phone, typed something quickly. "I'm sending you my direct number. Not CEO Sarah, but the woman whose life you saved, Sarah. If you need anything, childcare emergencies, flexibility, whatever, you contact me directly. Deal?" "Deal." They shook hands again, and this time it felt less like a business transaction and more like the beginning of something important. A partnership, maybe. Or just mutual respect between two people who'd seen each other at their most vulnerable. Ethan left the Meridian building at 10:47 a.m., nearly 2 hours after his scheduled interview time. The morning sun had burned through the early clouds, and the city gleamed around him. Everything looked different now, sharper, brighter, full of possibility. In his car, he sat for a long moment before starting the engine. Then he pulled out his phone and called Mrs. Chen. "Ethan, how did it go?" "I got it." She screamed so loud he had to pull the phone away from his ear. In the background, he could hear her telling her husband, then calling to Maya. "Daddy?" His daughter's voice crackled through the speaker. "You got the job." "I got the job, Bug. I knew you would. You're the best daddy in the whole entire universe." Ethan's eyes burned with tears he refused to let fall. "I love you, sweetheart. I'll pick you up after school, and we'll celebrate. Ice cream sundaes, the biggest ones they make. With extra sprinkles? All the sprinkles?" After he hung up, Ethan sat in silence, letting himself feel the magnitude of what had just happened. The fear that had driven him for 3 years, the terror of failing Maya, of not being able to provide for her, of watching her suffer because of his inadequacy, began to loosen its grip. They weren't out of the woods yet. There was still rent to pay, bills to catch up on, 1,000 small fires to put out. But for the first time in longer than he could remember, those fires seemed manageable, contained, not the raging inferno that had threatened to consume everything. He pulled out the business card Sarah had given him earlier before she'd revealed herself as the CEO. It was simple, elegant. Sarah Chen, Chief Executive Officer, Meridian Solutions. Her direct number was handwritten on the back. Ethan thought about the moment he'd made his choice, that crystallized second when he'd seen her in danger and his body had moved before his brain could interfere. It hadn't felt like courage in the moment. It had just felt necessary, inevitable. But maybe that was what courage really was. Not the absence of fear or calculation, but the decision to act anyway, to be the person you wanted to be, regardless of the cost. He started the engine and pulled out into traffic, already thinking about the conversation he'd have with Maya tonight. She'd want to know everything, would pepper him with questions about the office, his new boss, what he'd be doing. He'd tell her the truth, that sometimes doing the right thing feels like losing, right up until the moment it doesn't. And he'd tell her that she was right. He had been brave. Not because he'd aced an interview or impressed the right people, but because he'd chosen to be the father she deserved, even when it would have been easier to look away. As Ashford Avenue flowed past his windows and the Meridian building disappeared in his rearview mirror, Ethan Cole smiled. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new fears, new moments when the easy choice and the right choice diverged. But today, for this one perfect moment, the universe had rewarded him for choosing right. And that was enough. The celebration ice cream had been everything Ethan promised. Maya had chosen a creation so elaborate it barely fit in the bowl. 3 scoops of different flavors, hot fudge, caramel, whipped cream, and enough sprinkles to constitute a 4th food group. She'd eaten half before declaring herself defeated, her face sticky with chocolate and joy. Tell me again about the office, Daddy. They were walking home from the ice cream shop, the autumn evening cool against their faces. Maya's hand was small and warm in his, sticky from the sundae. It's got big windows that look out over the whole city, and everyone has their own desk with a computer. Will you have your own desk? I will. With a nameplate? Like the one in the movie we watched? Ethan smiled. She was thinking of some corporate drama they'd streamed last month, her curled up against him on their threadbare couch. Maybe. We'll see. I'm so proud of you. Maya squeezed his hand. Mommy would be proud too. The mention of her mother landed like it always did. Unexpected, a little painful. Ethan had long since stopped being angry at Jessica for leaving. He understood, in the abstract way you understand things that still hurt, that some people weren't built for the kind of struggle they'd faced, that love sometimes wasn't enough to keep someone anchored when the water got too deep. Yeah, Bug, I think she would be. Their apartment was on the third floor of a building that had seen better decades. The elevator worked maybe 60% of the time, so they took the stairs, Maya counting each one out loud like she'd done since she was 4. 27 steps to home. Inside, the space was small but clean. Ethan had made sure of that. No matter how tight money got, no matter how many hours he worked, he kept their home orderly. It was one of the few things he could control. Maya's toys lived in labeled bins. Dishes never sat in the sink overnight. The windows were washed every Sunday. But clean couldn't hide worn. The furniture was secondhand, the walls needed paint, and the bathroom faucet dripped constantly despite Ethan's attempts to fix it. Maya's bedroom was barely big enough for her twin bed and a small dresser. She decorated it herself with drawings and cutouts from magazines, creating a collage of dreams on the peeling wallpaper. Bath time, kiddo. Can I stay up late? It's a special day. 20 extra minutes, but that's it. While Maya splashed in the tub, Ethan stood in the kitchen and let himself feel the full weight of what had happened. He'd walked out of that interview expecting nothing, already composing the explanation he'd give Maya about why Daddy hadn't gotten the job. Already planning which bills he'd let slide another month, which part-time gigs he'd pick up to cover the gaps. Instead, everything had changed. $75,000 a year. The number seemed impossible, almost fictional. Ethan had made that kind of money once, in what felt like another lifetime. Before Maya, before Jessica left, before the bottom fell out, and he'd spent 3 years clawing his way back towards stable ground. He pulled out his phone and did math he'd done 1,000 times before, but with different numbers now. Rent, utilities, groceries, Maya's school expenses, the medical bills. With this salary, they'd cover it all. With room to spare. Actual savings. The kind of buffer that meant a car repair wasn't a catastrophe, a sick day wasn't a financial death sentence. But the job didn't start for 2 weeks. Until then, he was still stranded in the old reality. Ethan opened the drawer where he kept the bills he couldn't yet pay. 3 months of medical statements from Maya's pneumonia last winter, when she'd spent 4 days in the hospital and Ethan had aged 4 years. The total was staggering, even after insurance had paid their portion. Collection notices had started arriving last month, their tone shifting from reminder to threat. The rent was due in 5 days. His landlord, Mr. Kowalski, had been patient, but that patience was wearing thin. "You're a good father, Ethan," he'd said last month when Ethan had asked for an extension. "But I got a mortgage too. I got bills. You understand." Ethan understood. He had $847 in his checking account. Rent was $1,200. His next security shift paid $180, but that wasn't until Friday. He could pick up extra hours at the warehouse, maybe make another $200 by Tuesday. That still left him short. The weight settled back onto his shoulders, familiar and heavy. 2 weeks. He just had to make it 2 weeks, and then the cavalry arrived. But 2 weeks might as well be 2 months when you were counting dollars and rationing meals. "Daddy, I'm done." Ethan closed the drawer and manufactured a smile. "Coming, Bug." He helped Maya into her dinosaur pajamas, the same ones from this morning, washed so many times the colors had faded to pastels. She brushed her teeth while he read over her shoulder from the bathroom doorway, checking her technique like he always did. Then they settled into her bed for story time. "Can we read 2 tonight, since it's special?" 1.5, deal? Deal! She chose a book about a dragon who was afraid of flying, a story they'd read so many times Ethan had it memorized. He used different voices for each character, made Maya giggle with his terrible dragon impression. When he finished, she was drowsy but fighting sleep. "Daddy? Yeah, sweetheart? Are we going to be okay now? Like, really okay?" The question broke his heart and mended it simultaneously. She was 7 years old. She shouldn't have to worry about whether they'd be okay. But she'd grown up watching Ethan stress over bills, had learned to read his moods, knew when things were tight, even though he tried to shield her. "We're going to be really okay," he promised. "Better than okay. This job is going to change things for us." "Will we have to move?" "Not unless you want to, but maybe we could get a bigger place. You could have a bigger room." "Could I have a bookshelf, a real one?" Her books were currently stacked in a cardboard box. Ethan had promised to build her a shelf for months, but between work and exhaustion, he'd never found the time. "You can have a real bookshelf. We'll pick it out together." Maya smiled, her eyes already closing. "I love you, Daddy." "Love you to the moon and back." He stayed until her breathing evened out, watching her sleep in the dim glow of her nightlight. She looked so small, so vulnerable. Ethan thought about the moment this morning when he'd made his choice, how his body had moved before his brain could calculate the cost. Looking at Maya now, he understood why. She was watching, always watching, learning who to be by watching who he was. He'd shown her that people mattered more than opportunities, that kindness wasn't conditional on convenience. Those were lessons worth teaching, even if they came with a price tag. Ethan retreated to the living room and collapsed onto the couch. The adrenaline that had carried him through the day was gone, leaving only bone-deep exhaustion. He should eat something. He'd skipped lunch, too anxious to have an appetite. But the effort of cooking felt insurmountable. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Ethan, this is Sarah Chen. Just wanted to check in and make sure you got home safely. Also, I had my ankle examined. Grade 2 sprain, but no fracture. Doctor said I was lucky. I could have been a lot worse off if not for your quick action. Thank you again. Looking forward to working with you." Ethan read the message 3 times. His new boss, his CEO, was texting him personally to say thank you. The surreality of the day refused to diminish. He typed back, "Glad you're okay. Thank you for the opportunity. I won't let you down." 3 dots appeared indicating she was typing. Then, "I know you won't. Get some rest. You've earned it." Ethan set the phone aside and stared at the ceiling. The water stain in the corner had been there when they moved in 3 years ago, shaped vaguely like a rabbit if you tilted your head right. Maya had named it Hopscotch. She said it watched over her when she slept in the living room during thunderstorms. This apartment had been a refuge when they needed it most, a landing spot when everything else was in freefall. But it had also been a daily reminder of how far they'd fallen. Every creak, every stain, every repair Ethan couldn't afford to fix, they all whispered the same message. "You're not doing enough." Soon, that message would change. The next morning came too early. Ethan's alarm screamed at 5:30 a.m. He had a warehouse shift at 7. His body protested as he dragged himself out of bed, muscles sore from yesterday's tension. But bills didn't pay themselves, and he needed every dollar he could scrape together before the new job started. Mrs. Chen agreed to watch Maya for a few hours before school, as she often did. The elderly woman refused payment, insisting that helping neighbors was just what people did. Ethan kept a mental ledger of favors owed, things he'd repay once he could. The warehouse was a cavernous space on the industrial edge of the city, where Ethan spent 4 hours hauling boxes and organizing inventory. The work was mindless and physical, which he usually appreciated. It didn't require much thought, just endurance. But today his mind wouldn't quiet. He kept replaying the interview, Sarah's questions, the impossible coincidence of it all. What if he'd driven past her? What if someone else had stopped? The butterfly effect of that single choice spiraled out in infinite directions, most of them ending with him still trapped in this precarious existence. "Cole, you sleeping over there?" His supervisor, a gruff man named Deacon, was glaring at him from across a pallet of shipping boxes. "Sorry, on it." The shift ended at 11 o'clock. Ethan collected his time card, $180 for his trouble, minus taxes, and headed to his second job. 3 hours of security work at an office complex, sitting at a desk and monitoring cameras that showed nothing but empty hallways. It was boring work, but it paid, and the security company was flexible about his schedule. During his lunch break, Ethan called the hospital billing department. "Hi, this is Ethan Cole, account number 8472295. I'm calling about my daughter's bill from last February." The representative pulled up his account. He could hear her typing. "Yes, Mr. Cole. You have an outstanding balance of $8,347. We've sent several notices." "I know. I'm sorry. I've been trying to pay it down, but money's been tight. I wanted to let you know that my situation is changing. I'm starting a new job in 2 weeks, and I'll be able to make regular payments." "That's wonderful, Mr. Cole. Can you commit to a payment plan?" They worked out an agreement, $300 a month until the balance was cleared. With his new salary, it was manageable. Uncomfortable, but manageable. Ethan felt a small knot of anxiety loosen in his chest. "Thank you for working with me." "You're welcome. And Mr. Cole, congratulations on the new job." After the call, Ethan sat in his car and allowed himself a moment of relief. One fire contained, a dozen more still burning, but this was progress. His phone rang. Unknown number again. "Hello? Mr. Cole? This is Marcus Webb from Meridian Solutions." Ethan's stomach dropped. Was this the call where they changed their minds? Where they'd realized hiring him was a mistake? "Hi, Marcus. What can I do for you?" "Nothing serious. Don't worry. I wanted to go over some onboarding details. Do you have a few minutes?" Relief flooded through him. "Absolutely." Marcus walked him through the next steps. Background check, drug screening, paperwork that needed completing before his start date. Standard corporate procedure. But to Ethan, each checkbox felt like another brick in the foundation of his new life. "We'll need you to come in next Wednesday for orientation. Should take most of the day. That work for you?" "I'll make it work." "Great. Oh, and Sarah asked me to mention that we have an emergency childcare fund for employees who need it. If you run into any issues finding coverage for Maya during work hours, there are resources available. No judgment, no questions asked." Ethan blinked hard against sudden emotion. They knew his situation, knew his struggles, and instead of seeing weakness, they were offering support. "Thank you. That means a lot." "We take care of our people here, Ethan. You'll see." After they hung up, Ethan sat in the parking lot of the office complex and let himself cry. Not from sadness or fear, but from the overwhelming relief of being seen, of being valued, of working for people who understood that employees were humans with complicated lives, not just cogs in a machine. He'd forgotten what that felt like. The next week passed in a blur of work and preparation. Ethan juggled his 3 part-time jobs while completing Meridian's onboarding requirements. The background check came back clean. The drug test was negative, obviously. The paperwork was dense but manageable. Throughout it all, Sarah checked in periodically. Never intrusive, never demanding, just brief texts asking how he was doing, if he needed anything, whether he had questions about the role. It was clear she took personal interest in her employees' well-being, and Ethan found himself increasingly grateful he'd stumbled into her path, literally. On Tuesday, 5 days before his start date, disaster struck. Maya came home from school with a fever. By evening, it had spiked to 102. Ethan gave her children's acetaminophen and monitored her through the night, checking her temperature every few hours. By Wednesday morning, she was worse, 103.5, lethargic, complaining of a sore throat. "Daddy, it hurts to swallow." Ethan's mind immediately went to last winter, to pneumonia, to 4 days in the hospital watching his daughter struggle to breathe. He couldn't go through that again. Wouldn't survive it. He called the pediatrician's office as soon as they opened. "I need to bring Maya in today. She's running a high fever and—" "Our first available appointment is Friday, Mr. Cole." "Friday's too late. She needs to be seen today." "I understand, but we're fully booked. You could try the urgent care clinic on Morrison Street." Urgent care meant a $150 copay he didn't have. But what choice did he have? He bundled Maya into the car, her small body radiating heat even through her jacket. The clinic waiting room was crowded, flu season was ramping up, and they sat for 90 minutes before a physician's assistant called them back. "Strep throat, the PA announced after a quick examination. Pretty common this time of year. We'll get her started on antibiotics. Relief and stress warred in Ethan's chest. Not pneumonia, thank whatever forces govern the universe. But antibiotics cost money, and he'd already blown through most of his buffer covering the copay. At the pharmacy, he handed over his insurance card and waited while they processed the prescription. "That'll be $67, Mr. Cole." Ethan's checking account balance flashed through his mind. He'd been so careful, so strategic with every dollar. But between the clinic copay and now this, he was underwater again. He paid, took the medication, and drove home with Maya dozing in the passenger seat. That night, he sat at his kitchen table with a calculator and a stack of bills, trying to perform math that simply wouldn't work. Rent was due tomorrow. He was $380 short. His landlord had made it clear there was no more flexibility. Ethan could ask Mrs. Chen for a loan. She'd probably give it to him, this woman who'd shown him nothing but kindness. But the thought of it made his stomach turn. He'd spent 3 years accepting help from people. From food banks, from his daughter's school's emergency assistance fund, from strangers who donated to online fundraisers he was too proud to set up himself. He was so tired of needing help. His phone sat on the table, Sarah's number saved in his contacts. She'd told him to reach out if he needed anything, had given him her direct line and meant it. But asking his new boss for money before he'd even started the job? That felt like professional suicide, like confirming every doubt they might have about hiring someone in his situation. Ethan stared at the phone for 20 minutes, pride and desperation engaged in brutal combat. Finally, he picked it up and dialed a different number. Kowalski Properties. "Hi, Mr. Kowalski. It's Ethan Cole, Unit 3B. "Ethan, you calling about rent?" "Yes, sir. I'm going to be short this month, about $400 short, but I start my new job Monday, and I'll have the full amount plus what I owe by the end of next week. I just need a few more days." Silence on the other end. Ethan could hear Mr. Kowalski breathing, considering. "Ethan, you're a good tenant. You keep the place clean, you're quiet, you pay when you can. But I can't keep doing this. I got other tenants asking why you get special treatment. I got my own bills." "I know. I'm sorry. This is the last time, I swear. I just need... I'll give you until the 15th. That's 10 days. You don't have it by then. I got to start eviction proceedings. You understand?" 10 days. His first paycheck would arrive by then. Barely. "I understand. Thank you, Mr. Kowalski. Take care of that little girl. Always." Ethan hung up and dropped his head into his hands. 10 days. He could make it 10 days. He'd survived worse. Maya appeared in the kitchen doorway, wrapped in her blanket like a small ghost. "Daddy, I heard you talking. Is everything okay?" He manufactured a smile. "Everything's fine, Bug. Just boring adult stuff. How are you feeling?" "Better. The medicine tastes yucky, though." "Medicine usually does, but it'll make you feel better, I promise." He stood and scooped her into his arms, blanket and all. She was getting too big for this, but she wrapped her legs around his waist and her arms around his neck, and Ethan held her like she was still small enough to carry everywhere. "I love you, kiddo." "Love you too. Are you sad?" Kids saw everything. Maya had developed an almost supernatural ability to read his moods, to sense when the weight was pressing down harder than usual. "Just tired. It's been a long week." "But you start your new job soon. That's exciting, right?" "Right. Very exciting." She pulled back to look at him, her brown eyes, Jessica's eyes, searching his face. "Then why do you look scared?" Ethan set her down on the kitchen counter so they were eye level. "Can I tell you something true?" "Always." "Sometimes good things are scary because you're afraid they might not work out. You hope so hard that it hurts, and that makes you nervous. Does that make sense?" Maya considered this with the seriousness she brought to all important questions. "Like when I tried out for the school play and really wanted to be a tree?" "Exactly like that." "But I got to be a tree and it was great." "It was great. You were the best tree in the whole forest. So maybe your new job will be great too, and you're just nervous excited." "Nervous excited? Yeah." He kissed her forehead. "When did you get so wise?" "I learned from you, Daddy." The next few days crawled by with agonizing slowness. Ethan worked every hour he could, picking up extra warehouse shifts, taking on additional security hours. He slept 4 hours a night and ran on coffee and determination. Maya's fever broke, the antibiotics doing their job, but she was still too weak for school. Mrs. Chen watched her during the day, and Ethan raced home between jobs to check on her. By Friday, he'd scraped together another $200. Still short, but closer. The math remained impossible, but he kept working it anyway, hoping some miracle would make the numbers align. That evening, his phone rang. Sarah. Ethan, hi. Do you have a minute? Of course. He stepped out onto the apartment balcony where he could talk without Maya overhearing. I wanted to touch base before Monday, make sure you're all set, answer any questions you might have. I'm all set. Ready to go. Good. I also wanted to mention that we've arranged for a signing bonus, $2,000 paid out with your first check. It's standard for management positions, but it somehow got left out of the offer letter. I'm having HR send over an amended agreement. Ethan's grip tightened on the phone. A signing bonus. $2,000. Enough to cover rent, the medical bills, everything he owed with room to spare. Thank you. I wasn't expecting that. You've earned it. We're lucky to have you joining the team. A pause. Ethan, are you okay? You sound stressed. He almost laughed. Stressed didn't begin to cover it, but he wasn't about to unload his financial anxieties on his new boss. Just excited to start, and grateful. More grateful than I can express. Well, we're grateful to have you. Get some rest this weekend. Monday's going to be a full day. After they hung up, Ethan stood on the balcony and let the cool evening air wash over him. A signing bonus. Either the most fortunate coincidence of his life, or Sarah had somehow intuited his situation and created a lifeline disguised as corporate policy. Either way, he could breathe again. Sunday evening, Ethan laid out his suit for the next morning, the same charcoal gray one from the interview, freshly cleaned. He'd bought a new shirt, crisp white, no yellow tinge, and a tie that Maya had helped him pick out, dark blue with subtle silver stripes. You look like a superhero, Daddy. Superheroes wear capes. The cool ones wear ties. They spent the evening quietly. Ethan helped Maya with a school project, made her favorite dinner, and read her an extra story at bedtime. Tomorrow would be the first day of their new life, and he wanted to savor this last moment of the old one. Daddy? Maya said, drowsy and warm in her bed. I'm proud of you. I know I said that before, but I wanted to say it again. Thank you, sweetheart. That means everything to me. You're going to be amazing. He hoped she was right. Monday morning arrived with crystalline clarity. Ethan woke at 6, showered, dressed with methodical care. He made Maya breakfast, dropped her at school with a long hug, and drove to Meridian with his heart hammering against his ribs. The parking garage was full of expensive cars, BMWs, Audis, Teslas. His Honda Civic looked embarrassingly shabby by comparison, but Ethan didn't care. He was here. He'd made it. The lobby was just as impressive as he remembered. Marble floors, modern art, the quiet hum of success. The receptionist smiled at him. Ethan Cole? That's me. Welcome to Meridian. HR is expecting you on the 5th floor. The elevator ride felt faster this time. When the doors opened, a young woman in her 20s was waiting. Ethan, I'm Jennifer, HR coordinator. Welcome aboard. She led him through a maze of hallways to a conference room where 3 other new hires were waiting. Orientation was a full day of presentations, paperwork, and policy reviews. Benefits enrollment, IT setup, safety protocols. Standard corporate onboarding, but Ethan absorbed every word like it was sacred text. At lunch, the new hires ate together in the cafeteria, a bright space with floor-to-ceiling windows and surprisingly good food. Ethan learned their stories. Rachel was fresh out of college, starting in marketing. David was a mid-career software engineer looking for better work-life balance. Lisa was a project manager relocating from another city. They all seemed normal, competent, excited, and they all seemed to accept Ethan as one of them, never guessing that just weeks ago he'd been working warehouse shifts and sweating over whether he could afford groceries. At 3 p.m., Jennifer led him to his new workspace. A real office, not a cubicle, small but private, with a window overlooking the city. A desk with a computer, a phone, a nameplate that read Ethan Cole, Operations Manager. Maya would love this. "Sarah wants to see you before you leave today," Jennifer said, "just to welcome you officially. Her office is on the 7th floor." At 4:30, Ethan took the elevator up. Sarah's assistant waved him through to an expansive office that spoke of success without ostentation. Sarah sat behind a desk with her injured ankle propped on a cushion, video conference in progress on her laptop. She held up a finger, 1 minute, and Ethan waited by the door. "Understood. Let's reconvene Wednesday. Thanks, everyone." She closed the laptop and smiled at Ethan. "First day. How was it?" "Overwhelming in the best way." "Good overwhelming or terrifying overwhelming?" "Both?" Sarah laughed. "That sounds about right. Sit down, please." Ethan took the chair across from her desk. Up close, he could see the faint shadows under her eyes, the slight tension in her shoulders. Running a company took its toll, even on someone as competent as Sarah Chen. "I wanted to check in personally," she said. "Make sure you have what you need, answer any concerns. This is a big transition, and I want you to succeed." "I appreciate that. Everyone's been welcoming. Jennifer's great. The team seems solid." "They are. You'll fit right in." She leaned back in her chair. "Ethan, I'm going to be direct with you because I think we work better that way. I know you're coming from a difficult situation. I know this job represents a major change in your circumstances, and I want you to know that we're invested in your success, not just professionally, but personally. If you need flexibility, support, resources, you tell me. No shame, no judgment. Clear?" Ethan nodded, not trusting his voice. "Good. Now go home to your daughter and celebrate. You've earned this fresh start." As Ethan drove home through rush hour traffic, the city looked different. The same streets, the same buildings, but transformed by possibility. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was building something. When he pulled up to the apartment, Maya was waiting on the front steps with Mrs. Chen. She launched herself at him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "How was it? Tell me everything." "It was perfect, Bug. Absolutely perfect." That night, they celebrated with pizza and ice cream for the second time in 2 weeks. Maya made him describe every detail of his office, his computer, the view from his window. She wanted to know about his coworkers, his boss, what he'd be doing every day. "When can I visit? Can I see your office?" "Maybe in a few weeks, once I'm settled in." "Will you have to work late a lot?" The question every child of a working parent learned to ask. Ethan pulled her close. "Sometimes, but Sarah, my boss, she understands about family. I'll be home for dinner most nights, I promise." "Good. I like having dinner with you." "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." Later, after Maya was asleep, Ethan stood in his small kitchen and looked around the apartment that had sheltered them through the hardest years. The water-stained ceiling, the worn furniture, the bathroom faucet that still dripped. They'd been witnesses to his struggle, silent testaments to how far he'd come. Soon, they could move. Find a bigger place, maybe a house with a yard where Maya could play. Get her that bookshelf she wanted. New furniture that wasn't held together with hope and determination. Build the life he'd always wanted to give her, but for tonight, this was enough. The small, imperfect space where they'd learned to survive, where Maya had grown from toddler to child, where Ethan had discovered reserves of strength he didn't know he possessed. His phone buzzed, a text from Sarah. "Great first day. Sleep well. Tomorrow we dive into the real work." Ethan smiled and typed back, "Ready for it. Thank you again for this opportunity. Thank you for stopping when everyone else drove past. See you tomorrow." Ethan set the phone down and walked to Maya's room. She was sprawled across her bed, blanket kicked off, one arm hanging over the edge. He covered her gently, kissed her forehead, and whispered the words she'd told him just that morning. "I'm proud of you too, Bug. So proud." Then he retreated to his own room, set his alarm for 6 a.m., and fell asleep with something that felt dangerously close to peace. The choice he'd made that morning 2 weeks ago, the split-second decision that had seemed like sacrifice, had transformed into the greatest opportunity of his life. Not because he'd been rewarded for goodness, but because he'd shown himself capable of being the person he wanted to be, even when it cost him everything he thought he needed. And that person, it turned out, was exactly who Meridian Solutions had been looking for all along. The rhythm of real work established itself faster than Ethan expected. By his third week at Meridian, he'd fallen into a groove that felt both foreign and familiar. The muscle memory of corporate life returning after years of dormancy. Morning meetings at 8, project reviews at 10, lunch at his desk while answering emails, afternoon strategy sessions that sometimes ran past 5. It was demanding work, the kind that required focus and expertise, but it was stable, predictable. Everything his life hadn't been for 3 years. His team consisted of 12 people responsible for managing Meridian's operational infrastructure, everything from supply chain logistics to facility management to vendor relations. They were competent, experienced professionals who'd been working together for years, and Ethan had worried initially about how they'd receive him. New managers were always suspect, especially ones parachuted in from outside. But Sarah had laid groundwork he hadn't known about. In his second week, during a team meeting, a woman named Patricia, who'd been with Meridian for 8 years, had pulled him aside. "Sarah told us about what you did for her, how you stopped to help even though you knew you'd be late for your interview. That says something about your character, and character matters here. I just did what anyone should do." "But most people don't, that's the point." Patricia smiled. "We're glad you're here, Ethan. Really glad." The acceptance had been genuine, and it had made all the difference. Within 2 weeks, Ethan was contributing meaningfully to projects, his years of operations experience proving more relevant than he'd feared. He understood workflow optimization, could read supply chain data like a second language, had an instinct for identifying bottlenecks before they became problems. More importantly, he understood people, how to motivate them, how to listen to concerns buried in casual complaints, how to build consensus without steamrolling dissent. Years of juggling part-time jobs and managing his own impossible schedule had taught him empathy, and empathy turned out to be a surprisingly valuable management tool. But success at work couldn't erase the anxiety that still woke him at 3 in the morning, heart pounding with phantom emergencies. The fear was so deeply ingrained, the certainty that disaster lurked around every corner, that Ethan couldn't quite believe his good fortune would hold. Every day he expected someone to realize they'd made a mistake hiring him, that his background was too checkered, his gaps in employment too suspicious. Nobody did. His first paycheck arrived on a Friday, direct deposited into his checking account at midnight. Ethan woke at 5:47 a.m. from a restless sleep and checked his phone immediately. The number seemed impossible, $2,884. $62 after taxes and benefits, plus the $2,000 signing bonus Sarah had promised. He stared at the screen for 5 full minutes, refreshing the banking app to make sure it wasn't a glitch. Nearly $5,000. More money than he'd seen at once in 3 years. The medical bills got paid that morning. Every cent of the $8,347 he owed the hospital, cleared with a single transfer that left his checking account wounded but not destroyed. Ethan called the billing department and felt something unknot in his chest when the representative confirmed, "Your balance is now 0, Mr. Cole." 0. Not collections notices, not payment plans, not deferred and deferred and deferred until the debt felt eternal. 0. The rent got paid. Not just October's portion, but November's too, sent with a note of apology to Mr. Kowalski for the months of stress and accommodation. His landlord called him that afternoon. "Ethan, you didn't need to pay ahead." "I wanted to. You were patient with me when you didn't have to be. I won't forget that." "You're a good man and a good tenant. Glad things are looking up for you?" Maya's winter coat got bought, a puffy purple one she'd been eyeing in a store window for weeks. New shoes that actually fit. A backpack that wasn't held together with safety pins. School supplies, the good markers her teacher had requested. A set of books she'd been wanting to read. Watching her face light up when Ethan brought home these simple treasures felt better than any paycheck number. "Really, Daddy? I can keep them all." "They're all yours, Bug." She'd hugged him so hard his ribs ached, and Ethan had to blink away tears. By the end of his first month, something had shifted. Not just in his bank account, but in his bearing. Ethan walked differently now, shoulders back instead of hunched against invisible blows. He slept better, woke without the immediate spike of adrenaline-fueled panic. The constant mental calculation, can I afford this, what bill gets delayed, how do I make these numbers work, had quieted to a manageable hum. But even as life stabilized, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that he owed Sarah Chen more than professional competence could repay. She'd given him a chance when his resume screamed risk. She'd seen past his circumstances to his character, had bet on him when betting felt dangerous. That kind of faith demanded something in return. So when Sarah called him to her office on a Wednesday afternoon in early November, Ethan went with the certainty that he'd say yes to whatever she asked. Extra projects, longer hours, weekend work, it didn't matter. He owed her. "Close the door," Sarah said when he entered. She was standing by her window, looking out over the city, her posture tense in a way Ethan had learned to recognize. Something was wrong. "Everything okay?" "That depends on your definition of okay." She turned to face him. "We have a situation, and I need your honest assessment. No sugarcoating, no telling me what you think I want to hear. Can you do that?" "Always." Sarah moved to her desk and pulled up something on her computer. "We've been working on a partnership deal with Westbridge Technologies for 6 months. They're a major player in our industry, and this partnership would be transformative for Meridian. Access to their distribution network, collaborative R&D, significant revenue potential. The contract signing is scheduled for next Friday." She paused, her jaw tight. "This morning, I received a call from Westbridge's COO. They're having second thoughts, concerns about our operational capacity, questions about whether we can scale to meet the demands of the partnership. They want to send a team here Monday for a comprehensive audit of our operations. If we pass, the deal moves forward. If we don't, the partnership dies. The partnership dies, and we lose 6 months of work plus the opportunity of a lifetime." Sarah met his eyes. "I need you to lead the preparation. You've been here a month, which means you have fresh eyes on our systems. You know what's working and what's not, what we can fix quickly and what we can't. I need you to tell me the truth. Can we pass this audit?" Ethan's mind raced through everything he'd learned in 4 weeks. The supply chain protocols that were efficient but underdocumented. The inventory management system that worked well but ran on partially outdated software. The vendor contracts that had evolved organically over years without systematic review. Patricia's team was competent and dedicated, but they'd been operating at capacity for so long that optimization had taken a back seat to just keeping things running. Honestly, if they audit us today, we'd fail. Not because we're incompetent, but because we're not prepared to showcase our competence. We have good systems, but they're not documented the way a major corporation would expect. We have solid processes, but they're tribal knowledge instead of formalized procedures. Sarah's face fell. "So we're screwed." "I didn't say that." Ethan stepped closer to her desk. "I said if they audit us today, we'd fail. But the audit isn't today. It's Monday. That gives us 5 days. 5 days to document and formalize operations systems that have evolved over 12 years. 5 days to document the crucial parts. The systems Westbridge will care about most: supply chain, inventory, quality control, vendor management. We can't fix everything, but we can fix enough to pass." Sarah studied him with that intense focus he'd come to recognize as her evaluation mode. "You sound confident." "I am confident, but I need full authority to mobilize resources, pull people from other projects if necessary, and make decisions quickly without going through approval chains. Can you give me that?" "Consider it done. What do you need?" "Everyone in operations full-time for the next 5 days. No exceptions, no other priorities. Access to IT for documentation tools. A project manager to keep everything coordinated, someone good with details and deadlines. Lisa in project management. She's excellent." "Perfect. And I need you to trust me, even when what I'm doing looks chaotic or unconventional." Sarah extended her hand. "You have my complete trust. Make it happen." They shook, and Ethan felt the weight of responsibility settle onto his shoulders like a familiar coat. This was different from managing his own survival, different from the constant scramble of part-time jobs and bill juggling. This was professional pressure, the kind where failure didn't just hurt him, but damaged everyone around him. He'd forgotten how alive it made him feel. Ethan called an emergency team meeting for 4 p.m. When the 12 members of his operations team assembled in the conference room, their faces showed varying degrees of confusion and concern. Patricia leaned against the wall with her arms crossed, her expression skeptical but not hostile. "Thanks for coming on short notice," Ethan began. I'm going to be blunt because we don't have time for anything else. Meridian's partnership with Westbridge is in jeopardy. They're sending an audit team Monday to assess our operational capacity. If we pass, the deal moves forward. If we fail, we lose everything we've been working toward. The room erupted in murmurs. Someone swore softly. The good news is that our operations are solid. You all know that. The problem is that our documentation and formalization don't reflect our competence. We need to change that in 5 days. 5 days? A man named Robert, who managed vendor relations, looked incredulous. That's impossible. It's not impossible. It's just very difficult. Now, Ethan pulled up a slide showing a breakdown of priorities. I've identified 4 critical areas Westbridge will focus on: supply chain documentation, inventory management protocols, quality control procedures, and vendor relationship management. We're going to divide into teams, each responsible for one area. Your job is to document everything you do, how you do it, why you do it that way, what metrics you track, what outcomes you achieve. Patricia raised her hand. Ethan, we've been doing this work for years. We know what we're doing. Why do we need to document it? Because knowledge in your heads doesn't translate to confidence in an audit. Westbridge needs to see that our systems are reproducible, scalable, and resilient. If you got hit by a bus tomorrow, could someone else step in and maintain your work? That's what documentation proves. Cheerful image, someone muttered. I know this is a lot to ask, Ethan continued. I know you're already working hard, already stretched thin, but this partnership could transform Meridian. More resources, more opportunities, more stability for everyone here. That's worth 5 hard days, so I'm asking, are you in? The silence stretched for 3 seconds that felt like an hour. Then Patricia pushed off the wall. I'm in. Supply chain is my domain. I'll lead that team. Robert nodded. I'll take vendor management. One by one, the rest of the team committed. Ethan felt relief wash through him, followed immediately by the sobering reality of what they'd just agreed to attempt. Thank you. All of you. We start tomorrow at 7 a.m. Bring coffee, bring patience, and bring your expertise. We're going to need all 3. That night, Ethan worked until midnight creating the framework for their documentation sprint. Templates, checklists, examples of what good documentation looked like. Lisa joined him at 8 p.m., bringing Chinese takeout and a level of organizational precision that bordered on supernatural. You really think we can pull this off? She asked, spreading lo mein across a conference table covered in notes and laptops. I think we have to, so we will. That's not exactly reassuring. No, Ethan admitted, but it's honest. They worked through logistics, who documented what, how they'd review and revise, what quality standards they needed to meet, how they'd handle inevitable roadblocks and discoveries. By the time Ethan left the office at 12:47 a.m., they had a battle plan. He drove home through empty streets, exhaustion pulling at his consciousness. The apartment was dark when he arrived, Mrs. Chen having put Maya to bed hours ago. Ethan peeked into his daughter's room and found her curled around her new stuffed elephant, the purple coat draped carefully over her chair. I'm doing this for you too, he whispered, building something that lasts. Maya stirred, but didn't wake. The next 5 days blurred into a marathon of focused intensity, unlike anything Ethan had experienced since his pre-Maya career. The operations team arrived each morning at 7 and worked until 8 or 9 at night, fueled by coffee, catered meals, and the shared understanding that failure wasn't acceptable. Patricia's supply chain team documented every step of their procurement process, from initial vendor identification through final delivery. They created flowcharts, wrote procedure manuals, compiled metrics showing on-time delivery rates, and cost optimization over the past 3 years. The work revealed efficiencies Ethan hadn't even known existed. Patricia had been running a world-class operation through sheer competence and experience, but without formal documentation, it had looked amateurish. Robert's vendor management team cataloged every relationship, every contract, every negotiation strategy they employed. They built a database showing vendor performance, compiled case studies of successful partnerships, documented their approach to conflict resolution and contract renewal. The process uncovered some outdated agreements that needed updating, which they flagged for future attention. The inventory team mapped their entire system, showing how they tracked materials from receipt through utilization. They documented their quality control checkpoints, their exception handling procedures, their inventory turnover rates. The work was tedious and detail-oriented, but it revealed an operation running at impressive efficiency. Lisa coordinated everything with the precision of a conductor leading an orchestra. She kept teams on schedule, identified dependencies between different documentation streams, caught inconsistencies before they became problems. Ethan had never worked with a project manager this good, and he made a mental note to thank Sarah for the assignment. By Sunday evening, they had assembled a comprehensive operational documentation package that would have taken most companies months to produce. Ethan spent that night reviewing every page, every chart, every procedure. He made notes, suggested revisions, highlighted sections that needed clarification. At 2:37 a.m., he sent the final version to Sarah with a simple message, "We're ready." Her response came 3 minutes later. "You're extraordinary, all of you. Thank you." Monday morning arrived with the cruel clarity of Judgment Day. The Westbridge audit team consisted of 3 people: their director of operations, a supply chain specialist, and a quality assurance manager. They were professional, courteous, and absolutely merciless in their examination. Ethan led them through Meridian's facilities, walking them through each operational area while his team presented their documentation. Patricia explained supply chain protocols with confidence born from knowing her systems were excellent. Robert showcased vendor relationships with the ease of someone who'd built those partnerships through years of careful work. The inventory team demonstrated their tracking systems with pride. The Westbridge team asked pointed questions, probed for weaknesses, tested whether the documentation matched reality. They spent 6 hours examining every aspect of Meridian's operations, taking copious notes, conferring in hushed voices. Finally, at 4:30 p.m., they gathered in Sarah's office for the verdict. Ethan stood against the wall, his stomach twisted with anxiety. His team had worked themselves to exhaustion. They'd produced something remarkable. But was it enough? The Westbridge Director of Operations, a severe woman named Dr. Ellen Cho, opened her laptop and pulled up her notes. "Ms. Chen, when we arrived this morning, I'll be honest, I was skeptical. Your company has grown rapidly, and rapid growth often means operational shortcuts. I expected to find systems held together with duct tape and hope." Sarah's expression remained neutral. "And what did you find?" "I found some of the most thoroughly documented, efficiently designed operations I've seen in a company your size. Your supply chain protocols would put companies twice your size to shame. Your vendor management is sophisticated and strategic. Your inventory systems are not just functional, but optimized." Dr. Cho closed her laptop. "I found a company that takes operational excellence seriously, led by people who know what they're doing and can prove it." Sarah let out a breath Ethan hadn't realized she'd been holding. "So the partnership moves forward?" "The partnership moves forward. I'll recommend to our board that we proceed with contract signing as planned. Friday still works?" "Friday works perfectly." After the Westbridge team departed, Sarah turned to Ethan with an expression he couldn't quite read. Relief mixed with something deeper, something that looked almost like wonder. "You did it. We did it, the whole team. Don't deflect. This was your leadership, your vision, your refusal to accept impossible." She moved to her desk and pulled out a bottle of bourbon from a drawer. "This is 20-year Pappy Van Winkle. I've been saving it for something momentous. I'd say this qualifies." She poured 2 glasses and handed one to Ethan. "To operational excellence," she said, raising her glass. "To taking chances on people," Ethan countered. They drank, and the bourbon was smooth and warming, tasting like success feels. "Ethan, I want to tell you something." Sarah set down her glass. "When you helped me in the street that day, I was running late for the interview session because I'd been having doubts about the operations manager hire, about whether we were making the right choice from our candidate pool. None of them felt quite right, but we needed someone, so I was prepared to settle. And then I showed up late and disheveled. And then you showed up late and disheveled, having just saved my life without knowing who I was or what I could do for you. And I thought, that's the kind of person I want working here. Someone who does the right thing when it costs them something. Someone with character." She poured herself another half finger of bourbon. "But character without competence is just noble failure. I took a risk on you, Ethan. A calculated risk, but still a risk. And over the past 5 weeks, you've proven that my instinct was right. You're not just a good person, you're an exceptional operations manager. What you did this past week, pulling together that documentation package, leading your team through an impossible timeline, preparing us for an audit that could have destroyed our biggest opportunity. That was extraordinary work. I had an extraordinary team. You had a good team that you transformed into an extraordinary one. There's a difference. Sarah leaned back in her chair. I'm promoting you to senior operations manager, effective immediately. 20% salary increase, expanded responsibilities, a seat at the executive leadership table. You've earned it. The words took a moment to land. Promoted. After 5 weeks. From barely employed to senior management in a month and a half. Sarah, I don't know what to say. Say you'll accept. Say you'll keep doing what you're doing. Say you'll help me build this company into something even better. Yes. To all of it, yes. They shook hands, and Ethan felt the last piece of his old life fall away. He wasn't the struggling single father anymore. Not the man cobbling together part-time jobs and hoping the bills would somehow pay themselves. He was a senior manager at a thriving company, leading a team, making decisions that mattered. He was who he'd always wanted to be. That evening, Ethan took his team out for dinner at an upscale restaurant downtown. His treat, though he'd cleared it with Sarah as a company expense. They occupied a long table near the back, 12 exhausted people who'd just accomplished something remarkable. Patricia raised her wine glass. To Ethan, for leading us through the most insane week of our professional lives. To Ethan, the table chorused. To all of you, Ethan corrected. I just pointed the direction. You did the work. That's leadership, Robert said, knowing when to lead and when to get out of the way. The meal was celebratory, but also revelatory. As they ate and drank and shared war stories from the week, Ethan learned things about his team he'd never known. Patricia had worked 3 jobs to put herself through business school. Robert had been a single father once too, before his kids grew up. Lisa had overcome a learning disability to become one of the most organized people anyone had ever met. They were all people with stories, with struggles, with moments when they'd had to choose between easy and right. Hearing those stories, Ethan understood that his journey wasn't unique. Everyone fought battles. The difference was in how you fought them, with integrity or without it, with compassion or without it, with courage or without it. He'd chosen integrity, compassion, and courage. And somehow, impossibly, those choices had led him here. When Ethan finally arrived home at 11 p.m., Maya was long asleep. Mrs. Chen greeted him at the door. Congratulations, I hear. Sarah called me to say you could be late tonight. She called you? Wanted to make sure Maya was looked after so you could celebrate with your team. That's a good boss, Ethan. The best boss. After Mrs. Chen left, Ethan stood in his living room and looked around the apartment that had sheltered them through the hardest years. They could move now, could afford something bigger, nicer, in a better neighborhood. But standing here, surrounded by evidence of their survival, Ethan felt a rush of affection for this imperfect space. It had been enough when enough was all they had. That mattered. He walked to Maya's room and sat on the edge of her bed. She stirred, blinking sleepily. Daddy? Hey, Bug. Sorry I'm late. It's okay. Mrs. Chen said you were doing important work. We had a big win today. A really big win. Maya sat up more awake now. Tell me. So Ethan told her an age-appropriate version of the story, how his team had worked really hard to prepare for important visitors, how everyone had pulled together, how they'd succeeded because they'd trusted each other and refused to give up. Like in stories, Maya said, when the heroes work together. Exactly like that. Are you a hero, Daddy? The question caught him off guard. Ethan thought about the man he'd been 5 weeks ago, desperate and exhausted, making an impossible choice in an intersection. He thought about the man he was now, leading teams and earning promotions. Were they the same person? Or had that moment of choice transformed him into someone different? I'm just trying to do the right thing, he said finally. That's all any of us can do. That sounds like what a hero would say. Ethan kissed her forehead. Go back to sleep, Bug. School tomorrow. Love you, Daddy. Love you to the moon and back. As he prepared for bed, Ethan's phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Friday's contract signing is at 2 p.m. I want you there. You helped make this possible. He typed back, I'll be there. And Sarah, thank you for everything. No, Ethan, thank you for reminding me what kind of company I want to build, what kind of leader I want to be. You changed more than you know. Ethan stared at those words for a long moment. He'd thought this story was about him, about his struggle, his choice, his redemption. But maybe it was bigger than that. Maybe every act of courage or kindness rippled outward in ways you couldn't predict or control. Maybe that moment in the intersection hadn't just saved Sarah's life, but had altered the trajectory of Meridian itself, had reminded everyone involved what mattered most. Character, integrity, the willingness to choose right over easy. Those weren't just individual virtues. They were the foundation of something larger: families, teams, companies, communities. And when you found people who shared those values, who understood that success without character was empty, you built something that lasted. Ethan fell asleep that night with a sense of profound gratitude, not just for the job or the promotion or the financial stability, but for the reminder that the universe sometimes rewarded people who tried to live with decency. Not always, not reliably, but sometimes. And sometimes was enough to make trying worthwhile. Friday arrived with the weight of ceremony. Ethan woke early, the November sunrise painting his bedroom walls in shades of amber and rose. He'd laid out his best suit the night before, a new one this time, purchased with money that didn't have to be stolen from other necessities. Navy blue, well-fitted, paired with a crisp white shirt and the silver-striped tie Maya had helped him choose. "You look like a movie star," she'd announced when he tried it on at the store. "Movie stars wear tuxedos. The smart ones wear navy suits." Now standing in front of his bathroom mirror, Ethan barely recognized the man staring back. The shadows under his eyes had faded. The permanent tension in his jaw had eased. He looked rested, confident, like someone who belonged in boardrooms and contract signings, like someone who'd earned his place at the table. Maya was already awake when he emerged, sitting at the kitchen table with a bowl of cereal and a book about dolphins. She looked up and smiled. "Big day again?" "The biggest yet. We're signing the partnership contract today." "The one you worked so hard for?" "That's the one." She set down her spoon with exaggerated care. "Daddy, can I tell you something?" "Always, Bug." "I'm really, really proud of you. Like, so proud my heart feels too big for my chest." Ethan knelt beside her chair so they were eye level. "You know what? That's exactly how I feel about you, every single day. Even when I forget to brush my teeth? Even then." They had breakfast together, comfortable in the morning quiet. Ethan made scrambled eggs and toast, and they talked about Maya's upcoming school play where she'd been cast as a rabbit. She was nervous about remembering her lines, worried about tripping on stage. "You know what helps with nerves?" Ethan asked. "What?" "Remembering that everyone watching wants you to succeed. They're not hoping you'll mess up. They're cheering for you." Maya considered this. "Like how your team was cheering for you this week?" "Exactly like that. We're all on the same side trying to make something good happen." "That makes it less scary, doesn't it?" Ethan dropped Maya at school with an extra-long hug, then drove to Meridian through morning traffic that somehow seemed less oppressive than it used to. Maybe it was the season, autumn in full display, trees aflame with color. Maybe it was perspective. Traffic was just traffic, not a gauntlet of stress and desperation. Just the ordinary friction of people going places, living lives. The Meridian building gleamed in the morning sun as Ethan pulled into the parking garage. His reserved space, senior operations manager stenciled on the concrete barrier, still gave him a quiet thrill. Reserved parking. Such a small thing, but after years of uncertainty, permanence in any form felt miraculous. The office hummed with anticipatory energy. The Westbridge contract signing was the talk of every department, not just operations. Marketing was preparing announcements. Sales was strategizing about new opportunities. IT was planning integration protocols. Everyone understood this partnership represented a turning point for Meridian, a leap from successful mid-sized company to major industry player. Patricia intercepted Ethan in the hallway outside his office. "Morning, boss. You ready for your big debut?" My debut? Sarah wants you presenting during the signing, showcasing our operational readiness to the Westbridge executives. She sent the agenda around last night. Ethan pulled out his phone and found the email he'd somehow missed. Sure enough, there he was on the program. Ethan Cole, Senior Operations Manager, presenting on operational integration strategy. She didn't mention this. Patricia grinned. Sarah likes to throw people into deep water. She thinks it reveals character. I've noticed that tendency. So what are you going to say? Ethan thought about it. He had 3 hours before the signing. 3 hours to prepare a presentation that would either reinforce Westbridge's confidence or raise last-minute doubts. No pressure whatsoever. The truth, he said finally, that our operations are strong, that integration will be systematic and strategic, that we're prepared to scale. The same things we showed in the audit, just framed for partnership rather than evaluation. Need help? Actually, yes. Can you pull our efficiency metrics from the past 18 months? I want to show improvement trends, prove we're not just good, but getting better. On it. Ethan spent the next 2 hours building a presentation that was clear, data-driven, and honest. He didn't oversell Meridian's capabilities or make promises he couldn't keep. Instead, he laid out exactly what they could deliver, supported by evidence, contextualized by the careful documentation his team had assembled. It wasn't flashy, but it was credible, and credibility was what mattered. At 1:30 p.m., he walked into the executive conference room where the signing would take place. The space had been transformed, flowers on the credenza, Meridian and Westbridge logos projected on screens, a long table set with leather folders containing the contracts. Sarah stood near the window, talking with Dr. Ellen Cho and 2 other Westbridge executives Ethan didn't recognize. Ethan, perfect timing. Sarah waved him over. Dr. Cho, you remember Ethan Cole, our Senior Operations Manager. He led the preparation for your audit. Dr. Cho extended her hand. Mr. Cole, your team's work was impressive. I'm looking forward to your presentation. Thank you. I'll keep it focused and practical. Those are my favorite kinds of presentations. The Westbridge CEO arrived at 1:50. A tall man in his 60s named Richard Yates, who carried himself with the easy confidence of someone used to being the smartest person in the room. He shook hands with Sarah, greeted his team, and surveyed the conference room with the assessing gaze of someone who missed nothing. Ms. Chen, shall we begin? Let's. They took their seats around the table, Sarah and her executive team on one side, Westbridge on the other. Ethan sat beside Marcus Webb, acutely aware that 6 weeks ago he'd been late to his interview, and now he was helping negotiate a partnership worth millions. Sarah opened with brief remarks about Meridian's vision for the partnership, the synergies between the 2 companies, the opportunities they could pursue together. She was eloquent and precise, painting a picture that was ambitious but achievable. Then she turned the floor over to Ethan. He stood, advanced his first slide, and began. Operational integration is where most partnerships fail. Not because of bad strategy or poor planning, but because companies underestimate the complexity of merging systems, processes, and cultures. At Meridian, we've approached this partnership with that reality in mind. He walked them through Meridian's operational framework, highlighting the systems that would facilitate integration. Supply chain coordination protocols, inventory synchronization capabilities, quality assurance alignment. He showed efficiency trends proving continuous improvement. He acknowledged challenges, areas where integration would require careful attention, and outlined mitigation strategies. Our goal isn't to convince you we're perfect. It's to demonstrate we're prepared, systematic, and committed to making this partnership succeed operationally, not just strategically. Richard Yates leaned forward. Mr. Cole, you've been with Meridian how long? 6 weeks, sir. 6 weeks, and you're already driving operational strategy for our largest partnership? The question could have been skeptical, even hostile, but Yates's tone suggested genuine curiosity. I came to Meridian with extensive operations experience, Ethan said carefully, but more importantly, I joined a team that had already built excellent systems. My role has been to formalize and showcase their work, not create it from scratch. The credit belongs to them. Refreshingly honest, Yates made a note. Continue. Ethan finished his presentation with concrete next steps. Integration milestones, communication protocols, joint working groups. When he sat down, he could feel his heart hammering, but his hands were steady. Sarah caught his eye across the table and gave the smallest nod. Approval. The formal signing took 20 minutes. Lawyers from both sides reviewed final contract language. Sarah and Richard Yates signed multiple copies with expensive pens, their signatures converting months of negotiation into binding agreement. Cameras flashed, the marketing teams documenting the moment for press releases and social media. When it was done, Richard Yates stood and raised the glass of champagne someone had poured. To Meridian Solutions and Westbridge Technologies, to partnership built on mutual respect, operational excellence, and shared vision. To partnership, everyone echoed. The gathering transitioned into celebration. Executives mingled, discussing implementation plans and timeline details. The Westbridge team seemed genuinely pleased, their earlier skepticism replaced by confident optimism. Ethan found himself talking with Dr. Cho about inventory management systems, geeking out over optimization algorithms in a way that would have bored most people to tears, but which they both found fascinating. "You really know your stuff," she said. "Sarah's lucky to have you." "I'm the lucky one. She took a chance on me when a lot of CEOs wouldn't have." Smart leaders know talent isn't always wrapped in perfect packages. Sometimes it comes late to interviews, rumpled and honest. Dr. Cho smiled. "She told me this story, by the way. How you two met. That was you, wasn't it? The one who stopped?" Ethan nodded, suddenly uncomfortable with the attention. Takes guts to sacrifice opportunity for principle. Most people say they would, but when the moment comes, they rationalize their way past it. You didn't. "I couldn't, not and still be the person I want my daughter to see." There it is. That's the answer that matters. Dr. Cho raised her glass. To people who do the right thing even when it costs them, may there be more of you in the world. As the celebration wound down and the Westbridge team prepared to leave, Sarah pulled Ethan aside. "Walk with me." They took the elevator to the rooftop terrace, a space typically reserved for executive meetings, but empty now in the late afternoon. The city spread out below them, buildings catching the golden light, traffic flowing in arterial patterns. "That was masterful," Sarah said. "Your presentation, your handling of Yates's question, everything. You represented Meridian beautifully." "I just told the truth. That's what made it masterful. No overselling, no corporate speak, just honest competence. Richard respects that. So do I." She leaned against the railing, her expression contemplative. "Can I tell you something I haven't told anyone else?" "Of course." "I almost didn't build this company. 12 years ago, when I had the idea for Meridian, I was working at a huge corporation. Safe job, good salary, clear path to advancement. Starting my own company meant giving all that up, risking everything on something that might fail. I was terrified." The wind ruffled her hair, and she brushed it back absently. "My father told me I was being reckless. My friends thought I was crazy. My partner at the time left me over it, said I was choosing ambition over our relationship. And maybe I was. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was supposed to do this, that if I didn't take the risk, I'd regret it forever." "You were right. Was I, or did I just get lucky?" Sarah turned to face him. "I think about that a lot, Ethan. The role luck plays versus choice, circumstance versus character. You could argue that me building a successful company was just fortunate timing, market conditions, the right investors saying yes, and that your helping me was just being in the right place at the right time. But you don't believe that." "No, because I've seen what happens when character meets opportunity, when prepared people encounter moments that matter. That's not luck. That's readiness intersecting with chance." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "When you stopped to help me, you made a choice that revealed who you are. And that choice created a chain of events. Your hiring, the operations improvements you've driven, the audit preparation, this partnership we just signed. But here's what I want you to understand. Those events aren't lucky coincidences. They're consequences of character. You were ready when the moment came, and that readiness changed everything." Ethan felt something shift in his chest, a reframing of his entire journey. He'd thought of himself as desperate, barely surviving, one emergency away from catastrophe. But Sarah saw someone different, someone prepared, competent, ready for opportunity when it arrived. I've been operating from fear for so long, he admitted. Fear of failing Maya, fear of not being enough, fear that it would all collapse again. Even now, with the job and the promotion, part of me keeps waiting for it to fall apart. That's trauma, Sarah said gently. When you've been in survival mode, it's hard to believe you've reached safety. Your nervous system is still braced for impact. How do I make it stop? Time, success, building new patterns that prove the fear wrong. She smiled. And surrounding yourself with people who see your value clearly, who won't let you diminish yourself. Is that what you're doing? Absolutely. You're exceptional at your job, Ethan. Not because you got lucky, but because you're skilled, dedicated, and principled. I need you to start believing that. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city transition from afternoon to evening. Somewhere down there, Maya was at after-school care, probably playing with friends or reading in a quiet corner. In a few hours, Ethan would pick her up and take her for ice cream to celebrate the contract signing. They'd talk about her day, her upcoming play, her dreams for the weekend. Normal life. Stable, predictable, secure. Sarah, can I ask you something? Anything. Why did you really hire me? I mean, the real reason, not the official one. Sarah considered the question seriously. Because in that intersection, you showed me something I'd started to lose sight of, that there are still people who choose principle over convenience. I've been building this company for 12 years, Ethan. Making it successful has required compromise after compromise. Not moral compromises, but practical ones. Choosing profit over idealism, growth over values. I never crossed ethical lines, but I bent plenty of them. She turned to face the city. Then this stranger pulled me out of traffic, asked for nothing in return, and walked into an interview he knew he'd probably failed. And I thought, when did I become someone who'd lost touch with that kind of integrity? When did success start meaning more to me than the person I wanted to be? So hiring me was about you, not me. Hiring you was about both of us. I needed someone to remind me what Meridian could be. A company built on values, not just metrics. You needed an opportunity. Those needs aligned perfectly. Ethan's phone buzzed. A text from Maya's aftercare program. Maya says to tell you she got picked to be the narrator in the school play. She's very excited. He showed Sarah the text, unable to contain his smile. That's wonderful. Are you going to the performance? Front row? Both nights? It's non-negotiable. Good. Take the afternoon off on performance days. Family comes first. You're sure? Ethan, one of the things I'm trying to build here is a workplace where people don't have to choose between career and family. Where we understand that happy, balanced employees do better work than exhausted, resentful ones. If that means flexible schedules for school plays, doctor's appointments, or sick kids, that's what we do. Most companies don't operate that way. Most companies are run by people who've forgotten what matters. I'm trying to build something different. They returned to the office as the celebration was breaking up. Executives shook hands, exchanged business cards, made plans for next steps. The Westbridge team departed with warm farewells and promises to connect early next week. After they left, Sarah gathered her executive team in her office. Today was a milestone, not just the contract, but what it represents, validation that we're building something significant. I want to thank everyone who contributed, but especially Ethan and the operations team. The work you did made this possible. Marcus raised his coffee cup. To Ethan and his team. To the whole Meridian family, Ethan countered. This was a group effort. After the impromptu celebration, Ethan returned to his office to find an envelope on his desk. Inside was a handwritten note from Sarah. Ethan, your first stock options grant is processing. You're now an owner, not just an employee. Build this company like it's yours because it is. Thank you for reminding me why I started Meridian in the first place. Sarah, stock options, equity, ownership in a company that just signed a transformative partnership. The implications were staggering. If Meridian continued growing, if the Westbridge partnership succeeded, those options could be worth significant money. Real wealth, not just stability. Ethan sat at his desk, overwhelmed by how much had changed in 6 weeks. From 3 part-time jobs and overdue bills to senior management and stock options. From wondering if he could feed his daughter to planning which elementary school she'd attend. from survival mode to building something that would last. His phone rang, an unknown number, but local. Hello? Mr. Cole, this is Janet Morrison from Riverside Elementary. I'm the principal. Ethan's stomach dropped. Calls from the principal were never good news. Is Maya okay? Oh, she's fine. Sorry, I should have led with that. I'm calling because one of her teachers submitted her for our Student Excellence Award. It's given to students who demonstrate exceptional character, kindness to others, and academic dedication. The committee voted unanimously to honor Maya this year. Relief flooded through him. That's wonderful, thank you. The ceremony is next Friday evening. We'd love for you to attend. Maya's quite special, Mr. Cole. The way she includes other children, the way she helps classmates who are struggling. Her teacher says she's the most naturally compassionate child she's taught in 20 years. After the call ended, Ethan sat very still, his eyes burning with tears he didn't try to hide. Maya was being recognized for character and kindness, for being exactly the person he'd been trying to teach her to be, through example more than words. All those years of struggle, of choosing integrity over convenience, of stopping to help strangers even when it cost him. Maya had been watching, learning, becoming someone who made the world a little better just by being in it. That mattered more than any job, any promotion, any partnership deal. Ethan left the office at 6 p.m. and drove to Maya's aftercare program. She burst out of the building the moment she saw his car, backpack bouncing, face alight with joy. "Daddy, did you hear? I'm the narrator." "I heard. That's amazing, Bug." She climbed into the passenger seat, chattering excitedly about the play, her lines, the costume she'd wear. Ethan let her talk, drinking in her happiness, marveling at this fierce, compassionate little person. "How was your big day?" she asked eventually. "Did you sign the important papers?" "We did. The partnership is official." "So you won?" Ethan thought about that. One implied competition, someone losing so someone else could win. But this felt different, collaborative, building something together rather than defeating an opponent. "We all won. My company and the other company, we're going to work together now, make each other better." "That's nice. Winning together is better than winning alone." "Where'd you learn that?" "From you, silly. You're always saying we're a team." They went for ice cream at their favorite shop, the one with flavors named after superheroes. Maya chose Captain Strawberry with rainbow sprinkles. Ethan got plain vanilla, which Maya declared boring but acceptable. "Daddy, can I tell you a secret?" "Always." "I was worried about you before you got your new job. You tried to hide it, but I knew you were stressed. Sometimes I'd hear you on the phone talking about bills, and you got really quiet when I needed new shoes or school stuff." Ethan's throat tightened. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. You shouldn't have had to worry about that." "It's okay. I wasn't scared because I knew you'd figure it out." "You always do." She swirled her spoon through melting ice cream. "But I'm glad you're not stressed anymore. You smile more now." "I do?" "Yeah, it's nice. I like your smile." "I like yours too, Bug." On the drive home, Maya fell asleep in the passenger seat, exhausted from excitement and sugar. Ethan carried her up the 3 flights of stairs to their apartment, her head on his shoulder, her breathing slow and even. She'd gotten heavier in recent months, growing faster than seemed possible. Soon she'd be too big to carry, and he'd have to let her walk on her own. But not yet. Tonight she was still small enough, still his little bug who needed carrying. He tucked her into bed without changing her clothes, just removed her shoes and pulled the blanket to her chin. The purple coat hung on its hook, the stuffed elephant sat on her dresser, her new books lined up neatly against the wall. Evidence of their new stability, these small treasures that hadn't been possible before. Ethan's phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. "Congratulations on the big day, boss. The team wants to take you out for celebratory drinks tomorrow night. You in?" He typed back, "Absolutely. Name the time and place." Another text. This one from Sarah. "Hope you're celebrating tonight. You earned it. See you Monday." And finally, one from Mrs. Chen. "Heard about Maya's award. That girl is something special. You're doing a wonderful job raising her." Ethan set the phone aside and walked to his own room. The apartment was quiet except for the ever-present drip of the bathroom faucet and the distant rumble of trains, but these sounds no longer felt oppressive. They were just background noise to a life that was finally, miraculously, stable. He thought about Sarah's words on the rooftop, readiness intersecting with chance, character creating consequences rather than luck creating coincidence. Maybe she was right. Maybe the choice he'd made in that intersection hadn't been a random act that accidentally led to success, but rather the inevitable outcome of living according to principles, of being ready when opportunity arrived. And maybe that meant the success would last, because it was built on foundations solid enough to support it. Not just skills or timing or fortunate breaks, but character that would hold steady when circumstances shifted. Ethan changed into comfortable clothes and made himself tea, then settled on the couch with his laptop. He had emails to answer, project updates to review, weekend work that would prepare him for Monday's challenges. But for a few minutes, he just sat in the quiet, letting himself feel the full weight of gratitude for how far they'd come. 6 weeks ago, he'd been a different person in a different life. That person would barely recognize this one. Professionally successful, financially stable, respected by colleagues, valued by his boss. That person would have thought these outcomes were impossible, the stuff of fantasies and fairy tales. But here he was. Here they were, he and Maya, building something that would last. Not because they'd gotten lucky or caught a break, but because when the choice came, character or convenience, integrity or opportunity, Ethan had chosen right. And that choice had rippled outward, changing not just his trajectory, but Sarah's, Meridian's, everyone the partnership would touch. One choice, one moment, one decision to stop when everyone else drove past. Everything had followed from that. Ethan finished his tea and opened his laptop, diving into the work that would carry him through the weekend and into the next phase of Meridian's evolution. There were challenges ahead, integration complexities, scaling issues, the inevitable friction of growth, but he was ready for them. Had been ready all along, even when he couldn't see it. Outside his window, the city lights blazed against the darkness, each one representing someone's story, someone's struggle, someone's small daily choice between easy and right. Ethan was just one light among millions, but his light burned steady now, strong enough to guide Maya, to help his team, to contribute something meaningful to the world. That was enough, more than enough. It was everything. The months that followed the Westbridge signing unfolded with a rhythm Ethan had never experienced. Steady, productive, purposeful. Winter arrived early that year, blanketing the city in snow by mid-December, but the cold couldn't touch the warmth building inside Meridian's walls. The partnership integration moved forward with careful precision, teams from both companies working in synchronized harmony that exceeded even Sarah's optimistic projections. Ethan found himself at the center of it all, orchestrating the operational marriage of two corporate cultures with the same intuition that had guided him through those desperate years of survival. He'd learned something valuable in the struggle: how to read people, how to sense friction before it became conflict, how to build consensus from chaos. Those skills translated beautifully to partnership management, and both Meridian and Westbridge executives noticed. By January, the results were undeniable. Combined operations ran 15% more efficiently than either company had managed independently. Cost savings exceeded projections. Customer satisfaction metrics climbed steadily. The partnership wasn't just working, it was thriving. On a Tuesday morning in late January, almost 4 months after that fateful intersection, Ethan sat in Sarah's office reviewing quarterly performance reports. Snow fell past the windows, fat flakes drifting down like confetti, celebrating their success. "These numbers are remarkable," Sarah said, scrolling through data on her tablet. "Integration typically takes 18 months to show positive returns. We're seeing them in 4. We had good bones to build on, both companies. We had good leadership." She set down the tablet. "Richard Yates called me yesterday. Westbridge wants to expand the partnership, move beyond our original scope into new market segments. It's a significant opportunity, but it would require substantial operational scaling." Ethan felt the familiar flutter of challenge excitement in his chest. "How substantial?" "Doubling our current capacity over the next year, maybe more." "That's aggressive. Can we do it?" He thought about his team, their capabilities, the systems they'd built. Thought about Patricia's supply chain expertise, Robert's vendor relationships, Lisa's project management precision. Thought about the culture they'd fostered, collaborative, accountable, hungry for challenge. Yes, he said, but we'll need to expand the team. Bring in specialists for areas where we're stretched thin. Invest in automation where it makes sense. Build redundancy into critical systems. Sarah smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. I want you to lead the expansion planning. Full authority to hire, restructure, invest in infrastructure. Build the operations department you think we need for the next phase. That's a lot of trust. You've earned it, multiple times over. They spent the next hour mapping out preliminary plans, identifying priorities and potential pitfalls. The conversation flowed with the ease of genuine partnership. Two people who respected each other's expertise, who could disagree without friction, who shared vision for what they were building. As Ethan prepared to leave, Sarah stopped him. There's something else I wanted to discuss, something personal, not professional. He settled back into his chair. I'm listening. I've been thinking about that morning when you helped me, about the choice you made and what it cost you. She paused, choosing words carefully. I've been in business long enough to know that most people optimize for self-interest. It's rational, even necessary in many contexts. But there's a cost to that optimization. We lose something essential about what it means to be human. We forget that we're all connected, that someone else's crisis could be our own, that community matters more than competition. She stood and moved to the window, watching snow accumulate on the street below. I built Meridian to be successful, but somewhere along the way I lost sight of why success mattered. It became an end in itself rather than a means to something larger. Then you reminded me, through action, not words, that the point of building something isn't just profit or growth. It's creating an environment where people can thrive, where character is valued, where doing right matters more than doing well. You already knew that, Ethan said quietly. I just happened to show up when you were ready to remember. Maybe, but I want to make sure Meridian embodies those values going forward, not just in theory but in practice. So I'm establishing the Meridian Community Fund, a program where the company commits 5% of annual profits to supporting our employees and the broader community. Childcare assistance, emergency financial support, education funding, local charity partnerships, resources for people who need them, no strings attached. Ethan felt emotion rise in his throat. Sarah, that's extraordinary. It's necessary. We've been fortunate, and fortune carries responsibility. She returned to her desk. I want you on the committee that administers the fund, along with Patricia, Lisa, and a few others. People who understand what it means to need help, who won't judge those asking for it. I'd be honored. Good. Because you inspired this, Ethan. The fund exists because you showed me what it looks like to choose people over profit, compassion over convenience. I want that choice to be institutionalized here, built into how we operate. After the meeting, Ethan walked back to his office through hallways that had become familiar and welcoming. Colleagues greeted him by name, asked about Maya, shared updates on their own families. This was community, real and sustaining, the kind that made work feel like more than just a paycheck. His phone buzzed with a text from Maya's school. Reminder, Student Excellence Award Ceremony, Friday, 6 p.m. Maya is very excited. He'd been looking forward to Friday all week. Watching his daughter receive recognition for the character she'd developed, for the kindness that came so naturally to her. It felt like vindication of every hard choice, every sacrifice, every moment when he'd chosen to model integrity over expedience. That afternoon, Ethan met with his operations team to discuss the expansion plans. He laid out Sarah's vision, the timeline, the opportunities and challenges ahead. This is ambitious, Patricia said, reviewing the projections. But doable if we're strategic. We'll need to hire, Robert added. Maybe 10 new people across different specializations. Agreed. I want you each to identify gaps in your areas, define ideal candidate profiles. We'll start recruiting next month. The discussion evolved into detailed planning, the team energized by the prospect of growth. They'd proven themselves capable of extraordinary things, and this expansion felt less like risk than natural evolution. They were ready. As the meeting wrapped up, Lisa pulled Ethan aside. Can I ask you something personal? Of course. How do you do it? Balance everything, the job, single parenting, all the responsibilities. You make it look effortless, but it can't be. Ethan thought about those years of juggling 3 jobs, about 4 a.m. wake-ups and midnight worry sessions, about the constant anxiety that he was failing at everything. It's not effortless, he admitted, but it's manageable now in ways it wasn't before. Having stability makes all the difference. Being able to focus on one job instead of 3, having health insurance when Maya gets sick, not panicking every time an unexpected expense comes up, that changes everything. I've been thinking about going back to school, Lisa said, getting my MBA, but I'm scared it'll be too much with work and my kids and everything else. Is it something you really want? Yes, I think it could open doors, help me grow professionally, but what if I fail? What if I can't handle the workload? Ethan recognized the fear in her voice, the same fear that had paralyzed him for years, convinced him he couldn't risk reaching for more because falling would be catastrophic. Here's what I learned, he said. The fear of failure is often worse than failure itself. And sometimes the riskiest choice is not taking the risk, because you end up stuck in the same place, wondering what could have been. That's what my husband says. Smart man. Talk to Sarah about it. She's incredibly supportive of professional development. There might be tuition assistance available, flexible scheduling to accommodate classes. Don't let fear make the decision for you. Lisa nodded, visibly bolstered. Thanks, Ethan. That helps. After she left, Ethan sat in his office and thought about the conversation. A year ago, he'd been the one paralyzed by fear, unable to imagine a future beyond survival. Now he was encouraging others to take risks, to reach for growth, to believe in possibilities. The transformation felt complete in a way that surprised him, not just in circumstances but in identity. Friday evening arrived with clear skies and frigid temperatures. Ethan picked Maya up from school at 5:30, giving her time to change into the dress they'd bought together. Deep blue with silver stars, her choice entirely. She'd insisted on wearing her new shoes too, the ones that actually fit, and she practiced her walk through the apartment with exaggerated formality that made Ethan laugh. How do I look, Daddy? Like someone who deserves every award they're giving out. That's a lot of awards. You deserve all of them. The ceremony was held in the school gymnasium, decorated with student artwork and seasonal decorations. Parents filled folding chairs, cameras ready, murmuring conversations, creating a warm buzz of anticipation. Ethan found a seat near the front and watched Maya join the other honorees on the stage, 12 children from different grades, all squirming with nervous excitement. Mrs. Chen appeared beside him, taking the seat he'd saved. Wouldn't miss this for anything, she said. Maya's special, you know that, right? I'm starting to believe it. Believe it? That girl has something rare, genuine compassion without self-consciousness. She helps people because it doesn't occur to her not to. The principal, Janet Morrison, took the podium and welcomed everyone. She spoke about the importance of character education, about celebrating students who embodied the school's values. Then she began calling award recipients forward one by one, reading brief descriptions of why they'd been chosen. When Maya's name was called, Ethan's chest tightened with emotion. Maya Cole demonstrates exceptional kindness and compassion in everything she does. Her second-grade teacher, Ms. Washington, reports that Maya goes out of her way to include classmates who are alone, helps struggling students without being asked, and consistently shows empathy beyond her years. Maya makes our school community stronger simply by being part of it. Maya walked to the podium with careful dignity, accepted her certificate, and beamed at the audience with pure, unself-conscious joy. Ethan's vision blurred with tears he didn't try to hide. This moment, watching his daughter recognized for being exactly who he'd hoped she'd become, meant more than any professional achievement ever could. After the ceremony, parents mingled while children showed off their certificates. Maya introduced Ethan to Ms. Washington, a young teacher with warm eyes and genuine enthusiasm. Mr. Cole, Maya is an absolute treasure. The way she interacts with other children, the empathy she shows, it's remarkable for a 7-year-old. She learned from watching you, Mrs. Chen interjected, putting her hand on Ethan's shoulder. This man has been teaching her through example for years. Well, you're doing an exceptional job, Miss Washington said. Maya talks about you constantly, how hard you work, how you always keep your promises, how you taught her that helping people is more important than winning. That kind of value system is rare, and it's clearly taking root. After they left, Ethan took Maya for celebratory ice cream at their usual spot. She ordered the biggest sundae on the menu and somehow managed to finish half before declaring defeat. "This is the best day," she announced, chocolate sauce on her chin. "Because of the award?" "Because you're proud of me. I can tell." "Bug, I'm proud of you every single day. The award just makes it official." She considered this while scraping melted ice cream from her bowl. "Daddy, why did Miss Morrison say I help people without being asked?" "Because you do. You notice when someone needs help and you help them. That's special." "But isn't that what everyone does?" "It's what everyone should do, but not everyone does." Maya frowned. "Why not?" How to explain to a 7-year-old the complicated calculus of self-interest, the way fear and busyness and disconnection make people overlook others' needs? How to preserve her instinctive compassion while preparing her for a world that didn't always reward it? Sometimes people are too busy or too worried about their own problems to notice others. And sometimes people are scared that helping will cost them something important. But here's what I've learned, Maya. Helping people almost always gives you more than it costs. Maybe not immediately, maybe not in obvious ways, but eventually. Like how you helped that lady and then got your job? Ethan paused. He told Maya the basics of how he met Sarah, but not the full story of the choice he'd made, the interview he'd sacrificed. Something like that, yeah. "See? Helping is good. I don't know why people are scared of it." Her certainty, her complete confidence in the rightness of compassion, reminded Ethan why all the struggle had been worthwhile. He was raising someone who made the world better, who would carry forward values that mattered. That was legacy more profound than any professional achievement. The weekend passed in comfortable routine. Ethan worked on expansion planning Saturday while Maya played with friends. Sunday they visited the museum, wandered through dinosaur exhibits, ate lunch in the cafeteria while Maya explained everything she'd learned about Triceratops. Normal family time, unremarkable, and therefore precious. Monday morning brought news that shifted everything again. Ethan arrived at the office to find an urgent meeting request from Sarah, scheduled for 9 a.m. When he entered her office, she was on the phone, pacing near her window with unusual agitation. "Understood. Yes. I'll handle it. Thank you for the heads up." She ended the call and turned to Ethan. "We have a problem. A big one." "What happened?" "Richard Yates had a heart attack Saturday night. He's stable, but he'll be out of commission for months. Westbridge's board is in crisis mode, trying to figure out succession planning. And there's a faction pushing to suspend all new initiatives, including our partnership expansion." Ethan felt the bottom drop out of his stomach. "Can they do that?" "Technically, yes. The expansion wasn't part of the original contract, just verbal commitments from Richard. If the board decides it's too risky without his leadership, they could pull back entirely." "What do we do?" Sarah stopped pacing and met his eyes. "We convince them the expansion should continue. We show them that the partnership is strong enough to survive leadership transition, that pulling back would damage both companies, that momentum matters." "How?" "Westbridge's board meets Thursday to discuss strategy. They've agreed to hear from me, but they're skeptical. I need to show them concrete evidence that this partnership is built on solid operational foundation, not just Richard's personal enthusiasm. I need you to come with me." "Me?" "You're the operational backbone of this partnership. You can speak to the integration success, the efficiency gains, the scalability we've achieved. They need to see that this isn't dependent on any single person, not Richard, not me, not you, that we've built something sustainable." Ethan's mind raced. This was different from the audit presentation, higher stakes and more uncertain audience. These weren't potential partners evaluating competence. They were skeptical board members looking for reasons to retreat. "I'll need to prepare." "You have until Thursday morning. Whatever you need, data, support, resources, it's yours." The next 3 days were a controlled sprint of preparation. Ethan assembled every metric, every case study, every piece of evidence demonstrating the partnership's success. He built a presentation that was comprehensive but accessible, data-rich but narrative-driven. He rehearsed until he could deliver it in his sleep, anticipating questions and preparing responses. Lisa helped with visualization, creating charts and graphs that made complex operations comprehensible at a glance. Patricia contributed case studies showing specific integration wins. Robert compiled vendor feedback proving the partnership's market credibility. By Wednesday evening, Ethan had a presentation he believed in, but belief didn't eliminate nervousness, and he barely slept that night, running through scenarios and revising answers to imagined questions. Thursday morning, he and Sarah flew to Westbridge headquarters in Chicago. The flight was short but felt eternal, both of them reviewing materials, discussing strategy, trying to anticipate the board's concerns. "You ready for this?" Sarah asked as they approached Westbridge's building. "No," Ethan admitted. "But I'll do it anyway." That's all any of us can do. The Westbridge boardroom was intimidating: mahogany furniture, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. 8 board members sat around the table, their expressions ranging from curious to openly hostile. Dr. Ellen Cho was there, offering an encouraging nod when Ethan entered. The chairman, an elderly man named Douglas Freeman, opened the meeting without preamble. "Ms. Chen, Mr. Cole, thank you for coming. We're facing difficult decisions about Westbridge's future direction. Richard's health crisis has forced us to reevaluate our strategic commitments. We need to understand why we should continue investing in this partnership expansion when our leadership situation is uncertain." Sarah handled the opening, speaking eloquently about shared vision and mutual benefit. Then she turned the floor over to Ethan. He stood, advanced his first slide, and felt his nervousness crystallize into focus. 4 months ago, our companies began a partnership that many people thought was risky. Different corporate cultures, different operational approaches, significant integration challenges. But we succeeded because we focused on fundamentals: clear communication, systematic planning, respect for each other's expertise. He walked them through the data, showing efficiency gains and cost savings and customer satisfaction improvements. Showed them scalability analysis, proving they could double capacity without proportional cost increases. Showed them risk mitigation strategies addressing every concern the board might raise. Then he set aside his slides and spoke directly. "I understand your hesitation. Leadership transitions are scary, and the instinct to consolidate rather than expand is natural. But here's what I know from 4 months of integration work. This partnership isn't built on any single person's vision. It's built on systems, processes, and people at every level who've learned to work together effectively. Richard Yates was the catalyst, but the partnership has evolved beyond his individual leadership." Douglas Freeman leaned forward. "That's an interesting theory, Mr. Cole, but how do we know you're right? How do we know this doesn't fall apart without Richard's steady hand?" "Because we've already proven it. The past 4 months of integration happened while Richard was focused on other strategic priorities. The day-to-day operational success, the efficiency gains, the problem-solving, that was driven by teams on both sides who'd bought into the partnership's value. Richard created the opportunity, but we've made it work." A woman at the end of the table spoke up. "You're asking us to bet significant resources on continued expansion. What happens if you're wrong? If the integration hits unexpected problems during leadership transition?" "Then we adapt," Ethan said. "Just like we've adapted to every challenge so far. The expansion plan includes contingencies, risk mitigation, decision frameworks that don't depend on any single leader. We've built resilience into the system specifically because we know uncertainty is inevitable." The questions continued for 90 minutes, probing and skeptical and occasionally hostile. Ethan answered each one with data and honesty, never overselling but never retreating either. He could feel Sarah's steady presence beside him, supporting without interfering, trusting him to represent their shared work. Finally, Douglas Freeman called for a break. "We'll deliberate and reconvene in 30 minutes. Ethan and Sarah retreated to a waiting room down the hall. The moment the door closed, Sarah let out a long breath. "That was masterful, truly masterful." "Think it worked?" "I think we gave them every reason to say yes. The rest is out of our hands." They sat in tense silence, drinking mediocre coffee from a machine in the corner. Ethan checked his phone and found a text from Maya. "Good luck, Daddy. You're going to be great. Remember to smile." He showed Sarah the message, and she smiled. "Smart kid." "The smartest." "She's lucky to have you." "I'm the lucky one." After 45 minutes, longer than the promised 30, Douglas Freeman's assistant appeared. "They're ready for you." Back in the boardroom, the board members' expressions were unreadable. Douglas Freeman spoke without preamble. Ms. Chen, Mr. Cole, the board has voted to continue the partnership expansion as planned. Your presentation demonstrated operational soundness that gives us confidence in the partnership's resilience. We'll formalize the arrangement next week. Relief washed through Ethan so intensely he felt lightheaded. Sarah maintained her composure, but her hand found his under the table and squeezed briefly. "Thank you," she said. You won't regret this decision." "See that we don't," Freeman replied, but his tone was warmer now. "Dr. Cho spoke highly of your operational capabilities, Mr. Cole. It's clear she was right." On the flight back, Sarah ordered champagne and raised her glass. To partnership, resilience, and refusing to accept impossible. To taking chances on people who show up late and disheveled, Ethan countered. They drank, and Ethan felt something settle in his chest. This was real now, permanent in ways the initial contract signing hadn't been. They'd proven the partnership could survive adversity, could withstand leadership disruption, could scale despite uncertainty. They'd built something that would last. Winter yielded to spring with remarkable suddenness. One week the city was buried in snow. The next flowers were blooming in planters outside Meridian's headquarters. The expansion moved forward with systematic precision, new hires integrating seamlessly, operational capacity growing exactly as planned. By April, Ethan's team had doubled in size. 24 people now, each bringing specialized expertise that made the whole stronger. Patricia had been promoted to Director of Supply Chain Operations. Robert now led vendor strategy as a full department. Lisa had started her MBA program with Meridian's tuition assistance, proving that fear was no match for determined support. The Meridian Community Fund launched in March. With a ceremony Sarah insisted on keeping small and meaningful rather than flashy. They'd already distributed assistance to 3 employees facing hardship: medical emergency funding, childcare support, emergency housing assistance. Each case was handled with dignity and discretion, money given without judgment or strings. Ethan served on the committee that reviewed requests, and every meeting reminded him of his own desperation just months earlier. The difference was that these employees didn't have to struggle alone, didn't have to choose between catastrophes. They had support, community, people who understood that hardship happened to good people and help should be available without shame. In May, Ethan and Maya moved into a new apartment, not huge but significantly larger than their old place. Maya had her own room with space for the bookshelf Ethan built himself, filling it with books she'd been collecting since his first paycheck. The apartment had a small balcony where they ate breakfast on weekends, watching the city wake up beneath them. "This is nice," Maya said one Saturday morning, syrup dripping from her pancakes. "But I kind of miss the old place sometimes." "Yeah? What do you miss?" "I don't know. It felt like our place, you know? Like we survived something there together." Ethan understood completely. The old apartment had been witness to their struggle, silent companion through the hardest years. Leaving it felt like leaving part of their story behind. "We can drive by sometime if you want, see how it looks." "Maybe. Or maybe it's okay to just remember it." She took another bite of pancake. "Ms. Washington says sometimes moving forward means leaving things behind, even good things." "Ms. Washington is very wise. She said you should come talk to our class about your job, about how you help companies work better." "She said that?" "Yep. For Career Day. Will you come?" "Of course I will." The Career Day presentation happened in mid-May, Ethan standing in front of 25 7-year-olds explaining operations management in terms they might understand. He talked about puzzles, about finding pieces that fit together, about making sure everyone had what they needed to do their best work. "So you help people?" one boy asked. "In a way, yes. I help create environments where people can succeed." "That sounds important." "It is. Every job is important if you do it with care and integrity." Maya watched from her desk with undisguised pride, and afterward she introduced him to all her friends with elaborate formality. "This is my daddy. He's an operations manager, and he's very good at his job." Walking out of the school that afternoon, Ethan felt something shift. A recognition that he'd finally become the person he'd been trying to be all along. Not perfect, not without struggles, but solid. Reliable. Someone his daughter could be proud of without reservation. That was success more meaningful than any title or salary. June brought the one-year anniversary of Maya's hospitalization for pneumonia, a milestone Ethan had been dreading. But when the date arrived, instead of anxiety, he felt gratitude. They'd survived that crisis. The medical bills were paid. Maya was healthy, thriving, growing taller every day. The nightmare was over, replaced by stability he'd once thought impossible. On the actual anniversary date, Sarah called him into her office. "I wanted to mark an occasion with you," she said, pulling out a familiar bottle of bourbon, the Pappy Van Winkle they'd shared after the Westbridge audit. "What are we celebrating?" "You. 7 months at Meridian, and you've transformed our operations department from good to exceptional. The Westbridge partnership is exceeding all projections. Employee satisfaction in your department is the highest in the company. You've built something remarkable, Ethan." "We've built something remarkable. This isn't just me." "No, but it starts with leadership, and your leadership has been extraordinary." She poured 2 glasses. "I'm making you vice president of operations, effective immediately. 30% salary increase, full executive benefits, and a seat on the board." Ethan stared at her, unable to process the words. Vice president, executive level, board seat. A year ago, he'd been working warehouse shifts and hoping he could afford groceries. "Sarah, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll accept. Say you'll keep building Meridian into something we can be proud of." "Always, you know that." They raised their glasses, bourbon catching the afternoon light. "To character-creating consequences," Sarah said. "To people who take chances on strangers," Ethan replied. They drank, and Ethan let himself feel the full magnitude of how far he'd traveled, not just in circumstances, but in identity, in confidence, in belief that he deserved good things and could sustain them. That evening, he took Maya to their favorite restaurant, the nice one they'd only been able to visit once before, for her birthday. He told her about the promotion, about what it meant, about the opportunities it would create. "Does this mean we're rich now?" she asked, eyes wide. "Not rich, but comfortable, secure. We won't have to worry about money the way we used to." "Good. I didn't like when you were worried all the time." "Me neither, Bug." "Daddy, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "If you could go back to that day when you helped Miss Chen, would you still stop, even knowing you might miss your interview?" The question was more sophisticated than he'd expected from a 7-year-old, but Maya had always been unusually perceptive. "Yes," he said without hesitation. "I would stop every time. Because that's who I want to be, who I want you to be. Someone who helps people even when it's hard. Even if it costs you something important? Especially then, because that's when it matters most." Maya nodded, satisfied. "That's what I thought you'd say." Summer arrived with warm winds and long evenings. Ethan's expanded team hit their stride, operational efficiency climbing to levels that impressed even the exacting Westbridge standards. The partnership had become the industry's success story, case studies written about their integration approach, other companies trying to replicate their model. In July, Sarah announced that Meridian was going public, an IPO scheduled for early next year. The news sent ripples through the company, excitement mixed with anxiety about what going public would mean. But Sarah handled it with characteristic transparency, explaining her vision for growth while maintaining the values that defined Meridian's culture. "We're not selling out," she told the assembled company at an all-hands meeting. "We're scaling up. And we're doing it in a way that honors who we are. A company that values people over pure profit, that believes character matters, that understands success without integrity is hollow." After the meeting, she pulled Ethan aside. "Your stock options are about to become very valuable. With the IPO pricing, you're looking at significant wealth." Ethan had tried not to think about it, tried not to count money that wasn't real yet. But the math was impossible to ignore. His options could be worth over $1 million if the IPO went well. "That's life-changing money," he said quietly. "It is. But I hope you'll remember something. Money is a tool, not a destination. What you do with it, how you use it to build the life you want, that's what matters." "I won't forget." "I know you won't. That's why I'm not worried." August brought Maya's 8th birthday, celebrated with a party that would have been impossible a year ago. 12 friends, a rented bounce house, a cake shaped like a dragon. Maya's joy was incandescent, and watching her laugh with friends in their new apartment's courtyard, Ethan felt profound contentment. This was what he'd been fighting for all along. Not wealth or success or professional recognition, but the simple ability to give his daughter a childhood unmarked by anxiety and deprivation. To let her be a kid, safe and loved, and free to grow into whoever she wanted to become. Mrs. Chen attended the party, bringing homemade cookies and warm affection. She pulled Ethan aside while the kids were occupied with the bounce house. "Look at you. Look at what you've built." "I had a lot of help." "You had determination and character. The help just gave you opportunities to demonstrate both." She squeezed his arm. "Your mother would be so proud, Ethan. Wherever she is, she's proud." The mention of his mother, who died when he was 19, brought unexpected tears. She'd never met Maya, never seen him become a father, never witnessed this unlikely redemption. But Mrs. Chen was right. She would have been proud. Not of the titles or salary, but of the man he'd become, the father he'd proven to be. September arrived with Maya starting 3rd grade and Ethan settling into executive responsibilities that felt both weighty and natural. He'd grown into the role, learned to balance strategic thinking with operational execution, to lead with authority while remaining approachable. His team respected him, trusted him, pushed back when they disagreed, and executed brilliantly when aligned. In October, exactly 1 year after that intersection choice that changed everything, Ethan stood on Meridian's rooftop terrace watching the city transition from afternoon to evening. The same view he'd shared with Sarah that day, she'd explained the Westbridge partnership crisis. But everything looked different now. Sarah joined him, 2 coffee cups in hand. "Thought I'd find you up here, reflecting?" "Something like that." "It's been exactly a year." "Since you pulled me out of traffic and accidentally launched your corporate career?" "I prefer to think of it as character-creating consequences." Sarah laughed. "Fair enough. You know what I've been thinking about lately?" "What?" "How many people were in that intersection when I fell? How many cars drove past? How many pedestrians on the sidewalk looked away? Dozens of people, maybe 100, all making the same calculation. Not my problem, not worth the inconvenience. Someone else will help." Self-interest is rational. Is it? Because here's what those people missed: the chance to save a life, to be part of a story that mattered, to discover that choosing right over easy leads to unexpected rewards. They optimized for minor convenience and missed everything that followed. They also avoided risk. I could have failed, could have been fired weeks later, could have ended up worse off than before. But you weren't. And I don't think that's luck, Ethan. I think that's the universe rewarding alignment between values and action. Not always, not reliably, but often enough to make trying worthwhile. They stood in comfortable silence, watching lights blink on across the city. "The IPO is scheduled for February 15th, Sarah said. "Barring any market catastrophes, we should have a successful launch. How do you feel about it?" "Terrified and excited in equal measure. Going public means scrutiny, pressure, quarterly earnings expectations, but it also means resources to build something even bigger, to extend our impact beyond what we could do privately. You'll handle it brilliantly. We'll handle it brilliantly. I'm going to need you more than ever, Ethan. Operational excellence will be critical to maintaining investor confidence." "You have my complete commitment. You know that." "I do." She turned to face him. "I want to tell you something I've never told anyone else. That morning when you helped me, I was on my way to an interview session I was dreading, not because of the candidates, but because I was questioning everything. Whether Meridian was worth the stress, whether I'd built something meaningful or just another corporation optimizing for profit, whether I'd lost myself in the pursuit of success. You never mentioned that. I was ashamed. Here I'd built this company from nothing, achieved everything I'd set out to achieve, and I felt hollow. Like I'd won a race but forgotten why I was running." She smiled. "Then this stranger stopped to help me, sacrificing his own opportunity without hesitation, and I remembered. I remembered why building something matters, what success should look like, who I wanted to be as a leader. I just did what felt right." "Exactly. And in doing what felt right, you changed 2 lives, mine and yours. Probably more if we count everyone your leadership has touched, everyone the community fund has helped, everyone who's been influenced by the culture we're building here." Ethan thought about the ripple effects, The way one choice cascaded into consequences neither of them could have predicted. Patricia's promotion, Lisa's MBA, the employees who'd received assistance when they needed it most, Maya growing up with a father who wasn't consumed by desperation and fear. All of it traced back to that moment, that choice, that intersection. "Do you think we're special?" he asked. "Or did we just get lucky?" "I think we were ready when opportunity arrived. And I think readiness is something we create through thousands of small choices that shape who we are. You were ready to help me because you'd spent years choosing integrity over convenience. I was ready to hire you because I'd spent years building a company where character mattered. When those readinesses intersected, something remarkable happened. Character creating consequences." "Exactly." They finished their coffee as the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Then Sarah headed back to her office and Ethan to his, both returning to the work that filled their days with purpose and challenge. February 15th arrived with perfect timing, market conditions favorable, investor enthusiasm high, Meridian's numbers strong. The IPO launched at $42 per share and closed the first day at $58, a success that exceeded even optimistic projections. Overnight, Ethan's stock options became worth $1.3 million. He stared at his brokerage account, unable to process numbers that had seemed impossible just 18 months earlier. He'd gone from overdue bills and constant anxiety to wealth that could provide security for decades. But the money wasn't what made him cry that evening, sitting in his home office while Maya slept. It was the recognition that he'd made it, truly made it, to a place where fear no longer dictated his choices, where he could provide for his daughter without constant stress, where unexpected expenses weren't catastrophes, where he could focus on building rather than just surviving. He called Sarah, knowing she'd still be awake despite the late hour. "Congratulations," he said when she answered. "You built something extraordinary." "We built something extraordinary. This is your success too, Ethan." "I know. That's what I'm processing. A year and a half ago, I was 3 part-time jobs and a prayer away from catastrophe. Now I'm a vice president of a publicly traded company with financial security I never imagined possible." "You earned every bit of it." "Did I? Or did I just get lucky?" "There's that word again. Lucky." Sarah's voice was gentle but firm. "Ethan, luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. You were prepared, competent, principled, ready to lead. The opportunity came, and you seized it. That's not luck. That's character creating consequences." After they hung up, Ethan walked to Maya's room and watched her sleep. She'd grown so much in 18 months, shot up 2 inches, lost her baby face, developed opinions and interests, and a personality that delighted him daily. She was funny and kind and whip smart, everything he'd hoped she'd become. "We made it, Bug," he whispered. "We really made it." The following months settled into a rhythm that felt sustainable rather than frantic. Meridian thrived as a public company, stock price climbing steadily, quarterly earnings exceeding expectations. The Westbridge partnership expanded into new markets, operational synergies generating value neither company could have achieved independently. Ethan led his department with confidence born from success, mentoring new managers the way Sarah had mentored him. He shared his story selectively, carefully, when it seemed relevant, how he'd struggled, how one choice had changed everything, how character mattered more than credentials. In May, Maya's school held their annual student showcase. She'd written a story for her creative writing class, and she asked Ethan to attend the reading. The story was called The Man Who Stopped, and it was about a father who helped a stranger in trouble, even though it meant missing something important. The father worried he'd made a mistake, worried he'd let down the people depending on him. But in the end, the father learned that doing right always matters, even when it's hard. Maya read her story with clear, confident voice, and when she finished, she looked directly at Ethan. "I wrote this about my daddy. He taught me that helping people is more important than winning, that who you are matters more than what you have, that courage means choosing right even when you're scared." The room erupted in applause. Parents smiled at Ethan, recognizing the story's truth, but Ethan could barely see them through the tears streaming down his face. After the showcase, he and Maya walked home through spring evening warmth. "Your story was beautiful, Bug." "It's true, right? That's really what happened." "The important parts are true, yeah." "Good. Miss Washington says the best stories are the ones that teach us how to be better people. Miss Washington is very wise. Daddy, can I ask you something? Always. Do you ever regret stopping to help Miss Chen, even for a second? Ethan thought about the question seriously, giving it the consideration it deserved. No, he said finally, not even for a second, because that choice led to everything good we have now. But even if it hadn't, even if I'd lost the job and stayed struggling, I still wouldn't regret it, because some choices matter more than their consequences. Some choices define who we are. Like being brave even when you're scared? Exactly like that. They walked in comfortable silence, father and daughter, through streets that no longer felt threatening or hostile, but simply part of the city they called home. That summer, Ethan used a small portion of his IPO windfall to do something he dreamed about for years. He established an education fund for Maya, enough to cover college and graduate school without debt. Not buying her success, just removing obstacles so she could become whoever she wanted to be. He also donated significantly to the Meridian Community Fund, anonymously, ensuring it had resources to help employees for years to come. And he made a large contribution to Maya's school, funding supplies and programs that would benefit children for generations. Money, it turned out, was most valuable when used to open doors for others. In August, Sarah called him into her office for a conversation that surprised him. "I'm going to step back from day-to-day operations," she said. "Stay on as chairman of the board, but hand over CEO responsibilities to someone else. I've done what I set out to do with Meridian. Now I want to do something different. Work on educational access, maybe start a foundation, focus on systemic change rather than corporate growth." "Who are you thinking for CEO?" "Marcus is ready. He's been here from the beginning, knows the company inside out, has the vision to lead us forward. He'll be great." "I know. But I wanted you to know first, before the announcement. Because you've been more than an employee, Ethan. You've been a partner, a friend, someone who reminded me why any of this matters. The feeling is mutual. You changed my life, Sarah. Literally saved it." "No. You saved mine. The rest was just consequences." The announcement came the following week, received with mixed emotions throughout Meridian. Sarah had been the heart of the company, and her stepping back felt significant. But Marcus's promotion was universally celebrated, and his vision for Meridian's future was compelling and ambitious. Under Marcus's leadership, Ethan's role expanded further. He became instrumental in strategic planning, not just operational execution. His voice in executive meetings carried weight born from proven competence. He'd become improbably exactly the kind of leader he'd once thought he could never be again. The following winter, almost 2 years after that fateful intersection, Ethan attended Maya's school play, the one where she'd been cast as narrator. She delivered her lines with perfect clarity, commanding the stage with confidence that made his heart swell. After the performance, as parents milled in the hallway and children buzzed with post-show energy, Ms. Washington approached him. "Mr. Cole, I wanted to let you know, Maya's been selected for the Gifted and Talented program. She shows exceptional academic ability and emotional intelligence. We'd like to move her into accelerated classes next year." "That's wonderful, thank you. She's special, your daughter. The way she thinks, the way she treats others, she's going to do remarkable things." Walking home that night, Maya clutched her program and chattered about the play, who'd forgotten their lines, who'd ad-libbed brilliantly, how much fun it had been despite her nervousness. "Daddy, do you think I was good?" "You were extraordinary. Even when I almost forgot my line in scene 3, no one noticed. You recovered perfectly. That's because I remembered what you said, that people watching want me to succeed. That helped." They reached their apartment building, warmth spilling from lighted windows, evidence of lives being lived in comfort and security. Ethan looked up at their floor, their home, and felt gratitude so profound it bordered on spiritual. 2 years ago, he'd been desperate and terrified, convinced he was failing at everything that mattered. Now he was successful beyond anything he'd imagined possible, raising a daughter who made him proud every single day, contributing to work that had meaning and impact, all because he'd stopped when everyone else drove past. "Daddy?" Maya tugged his hand. "What are you thinking about?" "Just how lucky I am to have you." I'm lucky to have you too. You're the best daddy in the whole universe. Even when I work late sometimes, even then, because I know you're building something good, something that helps people. They climbed the stairs to their apartment, Maya still chattering about the play, Ethan listening with half his attention while the other half marveled at how far they'd traveled. Not just in circumstances, but in spirit, in confidence, in belief that good things could last. That night, after Maya was asleep, Ethan stood on their balcony, looking out over the city. Lights blazed against the darkness, each one representing someone's story, someone's struggle, someone's small daily choice between easy and right. His phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Saw Maya's play tonight. She was wonderful. You're raising an exceptional human. He typed back, learning from the best. Thank you for everything, Sarah. For taking a chance, for believing in me, for building something worth being part of. Her response came quickly. Thank you for stopping, for choosing right, for reminding me that character isn't old-fashioned, it's essential. You changed more than you know, Ethan, and you're still changing things every day. Ethan set the phone aside and stood in the quiet evening, letting himself feel the full weight of gratitude and contentment. The journey from that intersection to this balcony had been longer and stranger than any path he could have imagined. But standing here now, secure and successful and surrounded by love, he understood something fundamental. The choice he'd made that morning, stopping to help a stranger when it cost him everything he thought he needed, hadn't been a sacrifice. It had been an investment in his own character, in the person he wanted to be, in the example he wanted to set for his daughter. And that investment had paid returns beyond anything money could measure. It had given him community, purpose, meaningful work, and the deep satisfaction of knowing he'd built a life aligned with his values. Character had created consequences, just as Sarah always said. But more than that, character had created connection, to Sarah, to his team, to the work they were building together, to Maya, who was learning through his example that doing right mattered more than doing well. That was legacy worth building, success worth sustaining, a life worth living. Ethan returned inside, checked on Maya one final time, and settled into his evening routine. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new moments when the choice between easy and right would present itself. But he was ready for them. Had been ready all along, even when he couldn't see it. Because that moment in the intersection hadn't changed who he was. It had revealed who he'd always been, given him opportunity to demonstrate the character he'd been building through years of struggle and sacrifice. And in the end, that character had built something far more valuable than comfort or wealth or professional success. It had built a life of purpose, connection, and meaning. A life where his daughter could grow up proud of who her father was, not just what he'd achieved. That was enough. More than enough. It was everything.